Hello, Summerside Story here, and this is another Total Drama What If. This one is set in World Tour, which is nice for me as I just rewatched the season for the last What If, but instead of it being a whole new cast with similar team dynamics, it's the same cast as World Tour with new team dynamics. As with the first half of Team Victory being on different teams because they're captains in this What If, that dumpster fire of a squad will not be happening again, or at least in the same way. Anyway, if you like this content and want to see more of it, make sure to like, comment, sub, do all the stuff that YouTubers make you do, and let's begin the what if. In episode 1, or Walk Like an Egyptian Part 1, after escaping the pyramid, DJ, Leshawna, and Harold end up running out and end up crossing the finish line first, with Chris announcing that they are the team captains for the season. Harold would be pretty excited, wishing DJ luck, assuming they're two teams, but Chris specifies that all three of them are captains, as there are three teams this time. Harold would realize that he's going to have to work against Leshawna and would be pretty upset, trying to convince Chris to do something else, but Chris is not going to change anything for the sake of Harold, of all people. After all, split couples do make for good drama. Chris then afterwards would call for everyone else to go to the front of the pyramid without a song this time, meaning that Duncan would stay in the game for now as he no longer has to do a reprise. We cut to everyone getting to the finish line and have each of the captains stand on mat as they pick schoolyard style like Gwen and Trent did in the original season 2. I'm going to skip over the teams being made one by one, but explain some of the odd picks that seem a little strange. Harold would have picked Cody as his first guy thanks to the connection in the Toll Drama brothers. Lashana would have wanted to reunite with Gwen and pick her as her first girl, even though she technically bailed on Gwen in the Celebrity Manhunt special. I feel like Lashana would want to talk to Gwen again, so pick her. And also, all the final choices, that being Noah, Lindsay, and Izzy, would have been forced picks. Though Harold would have picked Tyler over Noah because he would see Tyler's strength as more useful. Also, Lashana would have gotten an extra member as compensation for picking last, which is why her team has 6 members. As for team names, since we have captains, I think Chris would make them the sole deciders for the names. So, Lashana goes for Team Fabulous, which would be a main color of pink with a mirror as its logo. Harold would go for Team Dynamite, thanks to Aaron S4 for the name, by the way, which would be a red logo with a lit dynamite as the symbol. And lastly, DJ would go with Team Mama, which logo would be just a picture of his mom's face, and purple is the main color, as that's what the color of DJ's mom's outfit is. Although DJ's team would complain about the name, Chris would go with it because it's funny and give each of their teams their respective items based off their captain's placements in the challenge as the rewards. That means that Team Luscious would have the camel, Team Mama would have the goat, and Team Victory would get the stick. Ezekiel then would arrive and ask to come back into the game, but without an extra person going home, Ezekiel is not allowed back in. But not wanting to give up, Ezekiel would decide to go on his own and make his own team to prove Chris wrong. Basically meaning that he's an unofficial team for the time being and will just be in the corner. After that statement, though, the episode would end and would cut to the next part. Episode 2, or Walk Like an Egyptian Part 2, opens up to see Chris explaining the challenge as he releases the scarabs, and its loving time would play out like the original song because everyone's still here. The teens would begin traveling, though Team Mama would be stuck on foot thanks to Alejandro not being able to keep everyone on balance on the goat, meaning that they have to carry it. DJ would likely do this because he likes animals, and I think it's clear what's going to happen with that. Anyway, the teams would start traveling as Alejandro uses his time on the camel to fully start working on Lashana, as with her being the team captain, he would like to be second in command. So the two would be chatting as Lashana is hard swooning for Alejandro even more than normal, but once Alejandro sees the Nile, he would direct his team there. Otherwise, though, it would just be kind of some normal conversation with the team, with Owen and Izzy making jokes and Lindsay being Lindsay. That's really it. Meanwhile, the other two teams and Ezekiel would be struggling horribly. All of them are running around in a Scooby Doo style montage occurring with all of them trying to look for the Nile, ending with Team Dynamite, Team Mama, and Ezekiel all running into each other. Everyone be a bit confused and annoyed and also a little bit dazed from the whole encounter, causing the goat from DJ's hands to be able to slip out and start running away into the desert. DJ would try to give chase and get it back to his arms, but ends up somehow hitting it into the air, causing it to hit a seagull, and both come crashing down to the ground. DJ would be pretty upset about this and hurting two animals, trying to check if they're alive, but they aren't because of the hard fall. He would cry, and Duncan would pat him on the back, feeling bad about the whole situation and also feeling sorry for the goat. But around this time, Team Dynamite ends up figuring out they have a divining rod, so they're off to the Nile. Courtney would order her team, well, DJ's team, but she would kind of be taking control at this point, to follow them, which everyone does, but as a consequence, Team Mama ends up leaving the goat behind with a quick burial that DJ would give it. So that means that Team Mama doesn't have their animal, which is important. Once the other two teams arrive, plus Ezekiel, we would head to the Nile and see Team Fabulous in the process of weaving their boat, about to finish, and the only reason why they haven't is because they have the largest team plus a camel to deal with. So that allows the other team to start working and Sierra to be able to blitz through, making the boat extremely fast like cannon, and able to finish even faster thanks to her team only having the stick, allowing them to start even before Team Fabulous does. Though Team Fabulous would be able to start shortly after them. On the other hand, though, Team Mama would be heavily struggling, as no one has any skills that would reasonably translate to leading to me. So Corny would be trying to lead the team, but it leads to even more issues as Duncan has to deal with her bossing around all day. The team ends up bickering for so long and ends up being so dysfunctional that even Ezekiel by himself is able to finish a boat and get ahead of them, which Noah would comment on being super embarrassing. Chris would eventually call for a musical reprise around this point, which makes Duncan hella pissed. You said there was only going to be one musical part an episode. I did, but this is a musical reprise, so start singing. Also, you wouldn't be here if you finished the last song, Ezekiel. This moment, alongside the build of anger from the boat, Courtney, and the general heat of the day, is enough for Duncan to start rage building the boat super fast. DJ would be trying to calm Duncan down from crashing out, but Noah would see this as a chance to catch up and encourage DJ to just let it happen. It's rowing time would then start playing with everyone singing besides Duncan, who is angrily rowing the entire time, allowing his team to catch up. In fact, he's able to row so fast, he's able to get his team first, and leads to the song ending abruptly as Duncan goes over to choke out Chris. Duncan would then lash out at him, talking about how horrid his day was and how he's done with Chris's bullshit, ending his rant by quitting on the spot. The other teams would have finished around this point and would be a bit shocked by the whole moment, but Chris would just then end the challenge and congratulate Ezekiel for earning a spot back into the game to replace Duncan on Team Mama. Ezekiel would be super happy and celebrate joining his new team, and afterwards, Chris would talk about how this is a non elimination as long as everyone's brought back their rewards, but DJ reveals that their team doesn't have to go as they killed it, meaning in a sort of strange turn of events, though Team Mama gets first class, they also have to face elimination. For the vote, Courtney be pretty mad at DJ for costing them the win, so would vote for him, as does Noah, believing that Noah could potentially be on risk on this team if he doesn't. On the other hand, though, DJ and Bridget would be voting for Ezekiel because they're not as mad at DJ for one obvious reasons, and more annoyed at Ezekiel for his past actions. Though it doesn't really matter, as Ezekiel being the swing vote allows him to save himself by voting DJ, which he did in canon, so why wouldn't he here? This means for the first time in forever, Ezekiel's not a first boot in the timeline. Yippee! DJ would sigh, seeing it coming, and feels bad for the goat that he hurt today, and he would say goodbye to his team before taking the drop of shame. Afterwards, though, Duncan would be joining him, even though Courtney would try to convince Duncan to stay in the game as she doesn't want to have to deal with the useless Ezekiel, which he would shout at Courtney that he's not useless. Duncan wouldn't listen, though, and give a half-baked goodbye to Courtney before he jumps as well. Alejandro then would end the episode with the same villain confessional he has in the original, just with a few minor tweaks. Episode 3, or Super Happy Fun Time Japan, has us open up in a comedy class with the hole in the wall plane scene still happening, pretty much the same as the original, as all the important people to that scene are still here, so there's no reason for that to change. But alongside of that, there'd be another scene of Cody complaining to Tyler and Harold about the whole Sierra thing he has to deal with. Tyler would tell Cody to just ask Sierra to stop, but Cody would talk about how he already has, but Sierra isn't complying. With Harold hearing this, he decides to give some very different advice to Cody. Harold basically tells Cody to indulge in Sierra more as he has a girl who will do whatever he wants as long as Cody asks, so why not make Sierra play into his fantasies and take control of the situation? I mean, if Sierra wants to, do everything for him, Cody should take advantage of that. Cody would ask if that would really work, with Harold saying it totally would, as he's a girl wizard. Ironic he's saying that considering the girl he is currently with, well, not with, unofficially, is so wrapped around Alejandro, she might as well be a twist tie, but still. Cody would look on Sierra as she's talking to Heather, who is kind of currently trying to work on Sierra and manipulate her, with Cody debating if he should try what Harold said or not. After that, we would pan over to first class where Team Mama is, and Courtney would be mentioning how with DJ gone, they should elect a new team leader, offering herself up as a choice. But Ezekiel would be against it, considering how Courtney was kind of the reason why their team was so dysfunctional in the first place last challenge, so would offhandedly state that her leading is a bad idea. Courtney would ask if the real reason why Ezekiel's saying that is because of his sexism, which Ezekiel would of course deny. Courtney starts arguing with Ezekiel as he tries to meekly defend himself, forcing Bridget to calm down Courtney as they break up the fight. This makes Noah offer the idea to have Bridget as the leader to stop the drama and get Courtney to shut up, so Noah would tell the idea to everyone, with Ezekiel not wanting Courtney to be the leader, would agree to it, and Courtney would also begrudgingly agree, saying that Bridget can take this role as they're friends after all. Bridget would be surprised about the new role, but take the role in stride, saying in confessional that she hopes that she won't let her team down. Anyway, after all that, the group gets tossed out of the plane thanks to Harold, with the musical number remaining the same, just adding Ezekiel in it, replacing DJ. After that, though, and some similar dialogue to canon, we would head to the pinball challenge, where each team must nominate someone to be put into the pinball to be smacked around. On Team Fabulous, Leshawna would nominate Alejandro, who would accept the role with grace, taking the panda and quickly taming it like canon. Bridget would then offer herself up for Team Mama, not only because she doesn't want her teammates hurt, but she also wants to prove herself as a competent leader. Bridget would also do pretty well with the panda, considering how fast she got to be friends with Bruno in Siberia and canon. Lastly, Team Dynamite would have Cody go for his team and deal with Sierra. The results for the challenge would be pretty simple. Alejandro ends up winning, Bridget gets second, and Cody and Sierra get last, because the order kind of seems obvious for me. So that would mean that Team Fabulous gets first dibs on the items, then Team Mama, and lastly, Team Dynamite would get the leftover scraps of what's there. Team Fabulous gets first dibs and starts grabbing their items that they can to film their commercial, landing on the idea that Alejandro had in the original that they used for Team Chris with the Tiny Tokyo. Team Mama then would arrive next, with Bridget coming up with a tropical vacation idea for an advertisement using the lights that Courtney found in canon, alongside some other tropical looking props. Lastly, Team Dynamite would have Harold lead the lone samurai idea he had in the original, which everyone goes with as no one else has any better ideas. With each team having an idea, though, they would start leaving with their supplies and go to film. On Team Fabulous, as the team sets up the Tiny Tokyo, Gwen and Leshawna would be starting to rekindle their friendship after Leshawna abandoned Gwen between the time of action and the Celebrity Manhunt special. They would be enjoying each other's company, and Gwen would ask a bit on why Leshawna dropped her, with Leshawna explaining her side of the story and admitting that it was pretty much her fault, and the reason why she chose Gwen first out of all the girls was to apologize for it. The moment would be quite sweet with the two making up for what happened, but it'd be cut off by Lindsay running over the city by accident as Owen stopping around the ground made her believe that the monster was real and she'd be scared of it, because she's silly like that. Gwen would poke fun at the stupidity, with Lashana laughing a bit too, but the team has to rebuild that section a bit. Outside of that, they go the same as Team Chris and Cannon, so I'm going to be skipping over them besides that. Panning over to Team Mama, they'd be doing quite well, with Bridget taking her role as team leader quite seriously, but still having her calm demeanor to balance things out. Courtney would comment on how she's surprised that Bridget is doing this so well, with Bridget saying that with her being used to co hosting in the aftermath and used to filming because of the aftermath, she has this challenge quite in the bag. With Jeff not being the best at that type of stuff, she would have had to pick the slack up on like filming, recording, and that type of stuff with lighting. So Bridget would likely be experienced with this type of thing, which is why I'm making her good at this challenge. Anyway, Ezekiel would be trying to memorize his lines and failing over and over again, with Noah making fun of his stutters in a half playful, half insulting way. Eventually, though, Ezekiel would be able to figure out his lines and celebrate, with Noah sarcastically congratulating him on probably the most astounding achievement of his lifetime. Last up, we see Team Dynamite with Heather complaining about Harold's idea being incredibly stupid, but Harold, who's on even bigger of a power trip than the original as he's a team leader, telling Heather to suck it up, with Heather getting pissed and chucking the hat they were using for the commercials and storms off as a result. Meanwhile, Cody would be trying to that idea that Harold said about, taking control of Sierra and that type of stuff, with it working pretty well, as Sierra is desperate to do anything that Cody says and following him without a second thought. It feels quite empowering, and Cody would be pretty happy about this. Anyway, Chris would announce that they only have 5 minutes left to film the commercial, with Harold ordering his team to start filming in a demanding voice. After that, we would see the results. Team Fabulous's commercial would be going first, and like I said, it's Team Chris's commercial, but with the new people placed in. And the same logic falls for Team Dynamite, which would be the same commercial as Team Victory's, which the new people swapped in, and Heather not present because she left. The only one that would be entirely unique would be Team Mama's commercial, which would end up looking very professional. It would start on the beach with the two guys enjoying the sun and trying to pick up the girls on the team, but they would act uninterested until the fishtails are introduced. It would look like Noah and Ezekiel are making progress, but Courtney would just steal the fishtails from them and knock the guys down, eating one and saying that these are way better than boys, which would end the commercial after saying happy young time, go try and fish, that stuff. Anyway, Chris would comment on how surprisingly well made it is, and Chef would give them the win as a result of that because it looks professional quality. They would celebrate with Courtney being willing to admit and swallow her pride that maybe Bridget's the right leader for this team, but she's second in command, of course. Bridget would chuckle and agree, basically solidifying that Bridget's the team leader for this team for the foreseeable future. As Chris asked for the losing team from Chef, Chef would end up picking Team Dynamite as a result because they lost the Team Chris's commercial and canon, so I don't see why Team Dynamite's new people would make it better, so Team Dynamite would head to the vote. For the vote, it would seem to be setting up to be a Heather vote, as Cody, Sierra, and Tyler are all gunning for her. But Alejandro ends up doing what he does in the original and gets Harold to toss his own butt out of the plane and sacrifice himself for the sake of honor, meaning that the votes end up not mattering and Harold would still go home no matter what. Harold has his dramatic final moments, which would be pretty close to canon just with the new people present for the elimination, as Harold jumps. Well, I guess Leshawna is the only captain left now. It didn't really save the other two, dear God. Episode 4, Anything You Can't Do, I Can Do Better, starts with Team Mama in first class once again, with Zeke talking about how they aren't going to see anywhere but here until merge, with Courtney agreeing with him, also craving another win. Panning to economy, though, we would have Alejandro continue his flirtation with Leshawna, as Cody has a brief scene talking to Gwen, asking for her for some hair dye that he can use that kind of looks like hers. Gwen would be a bit confused, asking why he wants it, but even with Cody giving a half baked answer, Gwen doesn't really care and just gives it to Cody. Though she would have a confessional jokingly saying that if he's doing it trying to attract her after the breakup with Trent, it's not going to work. She then laughs thinking about Cody in an emo look. The cast arrive into the Yukon, and Chris would go over the challenge with Leshawna mentioning to her team about the strategy she came up with Alejandro stating it's a beautiful idea matching a beautiful girl. Leshawna would swoon over to comment, and the challenge would shortly begin afterwards. Everyone starts hopping over the water, with everyone who was present during the original challenge doing the same they did in canon, while Ezekiel, who's the only person who wasn't here, is slipping on the ice every 5 seconds thanks to him being a bit of a klutz. Alejandro would also start working on Bridget like he did canonically, but the difference here is that Courtney is the type of person to pay attention to her team and not wanting them to get distracted. So she would see Bridget cozy up to Alejandro and would tell her to stop and join Courtney on the sled. Bridget would then get to refocus and join Courtney, with Alejandro annoyed and confessional about his plans not working and being foiled. Thanks to this, he would join Leshawna on the sled as she gets ready to start pulling. Also, because of the changes in Victory's elimination, the pullers for the challenge are Leshawna for Team Fabulous, Courtney for Team Mama, and Heather for Team Dynamite. That's also the order they get for what type of sled they get. So Heather gets the worst, Leshawna gets the best. As Team Mama would begin traveling, Courtney would start going lightly off about how Bridget flirting with Alejandro is wrong and she needs to stop. Bridget, though, would just say how Alejandro was being nice to her and there was nothing to it. But Courtney would point out how she's the captain of her team and needs to focus on her team, and that Bridget has a boyfriend. How is Jeff going to react to her cozying up to Alejandro? I mean, Courtney would just talk about how if she saw Duncan doing that with another girl, she would kill him. Simple as that. Subtle foreshadowing. Anyway, Bridget would try to defend herself, but eventually see Courtney's point, so Bridget would end up agreeing, trying not to get distracted by Alejandro anymore, at least till merge starts. Courtney would be pretty happy with this and continue traveling, with picking up Noah and Ezekiel along the way. They end up doing pretty fine thanks to Courtney being a better puller, as she's no longer being whipped and also has a super light team, which are very easy to carry. Moving on to Team Dynamite, Cody and Sierra would be talking on the ice for a bit, with Cody in his chatter voice giving Sierra parameters for their future relationship. She would only hear half of it, though, and gets excited at the prospect of Cody falling for her, leading to their usual weird Codera moments that they happen, with Cody muttering how that will have to need to stop. Though the two get picked up by Heather and Tyler, with Heather muttering about how insane Sierra is. They would be traveling, with Heather not doing as good as Courtney because she's doing the stuff in heels, which would be much harder. At least she has an okay team to carry. Last team to talk about is Team Fabulous, with Leshawna pulling her sled pretty standardly as her and Alejandro talk for a bit, before the song starts, as it would happen around here thanks to no Bridget being stuck to a pole because it can't happen because Bridget was on the sled with Courtney, so yeah, that never occurred. That means that musical number is replaced with a song called Mush Mush Mush, which if you haven't seen the World Tour What If from me, it's a fast-paced Christmas song with sleigh bells as a key instrument. Anyway, as the song would go on, we would see several people traveling together to the finish line, and each team having their own part in the song, as more and more members are picked up on the sleds. The final section, though, of the race would be a bit hard to tell thanks to no team having a super big problem, like someone being stuck to a pole. But I'm kind of leaning towards Team Fabulous losing here because of one person. Owen would have broken the bridge like he did in the original, causing him and Izzy, who he was traveling to the finish line with, to end up falling into the frozen lake because they don't have a Tyler to save them and turn into frozen popsicles. So, once the split second race happens, Team Fabulous ends up crossing without them, causing them to lose. As for who wins, Team Mama not only has lighter teammates, but also has a more athletic Courtney pulling them instead of Heather. So I think Team Mama wins, and Team Fabulous heads to elimination. For the vote, there's two main targets, Owen and Izzy, thanks to them costing the challenge today. But Alejandro would particularly target Owen as he's been getting quite annoyed with him recently and wants to start working on flirting with Izzy once Owen is eliminated. Lindsay and Leshawna would easily agree to this, but Gwen is a bit more unsure thanks to her bond with Owen in season 1 and not being attracted to Alejandro. Gwen would suggest voting for Izzy instead, but gets outvoted as Alejandro, seeing Gwen's pushback, would take note of it for later. But even without her voting for Owen, it's still a 2 to 3 to 1 vote, with Owen going home. Owen sadly takes his exit and says goodbye to Izzy, wishing her luck, with Alejandro helping Owen off the plane with a hint of malice in his eyes. Gwen would see this and find it a bit strange. She kind of can tell that he didn't like Owen based off the two's interactions, but that much? No normal person should be booting someone off a plane with that much glee. Well, unless it's Heather, but it isn't. Oh, it's Owen. She would mentally take note of it for later and sort of be suspicious of Alejandro in confessional before the episode ends. Episode 5 for Broadway Baby starts off with Team Mama in first class once again, just enjoying the food and each other's company with not much to say because they've kind of been here so much. Moving on to economy class, though, we would have Alejandro beginning to work on Izzy and trying to get her wrapped around his finger. Considering how Izzy is shown several times in this season to be attracted to Alejandro, I think this would end up working without Owen around. Meanwhile, on Team Dynamite, we would get to see Sierra's brand new hairdo based off Cody's preference for goth women. Her hair is now entirely down, with black streaked out throughout it, with her purple still peeking through here and there. Basically, it's Gwen's hair, but longer and replacing the blue with black. Sierra would ask if Cody likes it, which he would say he does a lot. Sierra would get excited and about to hug Cody, but he interjects, making it pretty clear for them to make things work and be a couple together. He's going to need the Sierra to do exactly what he wants, and he would be quite exactly assertive about it. Or assertive as you can be when you're a pipsqueak at 4 foot -3, but Cody's trying to be assertive here. Anyway, Sierra would like it when he's trying to take charge, so would go with it. As Gwen and Heather both make comments at the same time about how weird Sierra and Cody's relationship is right now, with both sides being immediately disgusted about agreeing with each other in the first place. Heading to the challenge, the team start making their way up to the Statue of Liberty, with Alejandro trying to flirt with Bridget to distract her, but thanks to Bridget and Courtney's talk last episode, she would be trying to ignore him, even if it's really, really hard to do so. Alejandro would notice that, and Courtney would tell him to focus on his team for the first time in his life and continue climbing herself. With Alejandro seeing that and noting that his plan with Bridget isn't going to work till Courtney is eliminated, which is not likely to happen anytime soon, so Alejandro elects to decide to do his plan with Sierra that he does in the original instead, which will play out pretty much the same as the original, so I won't be going over it. For result of the first part, Team Dynamite would end up being first thanks to Tyler using his strong fingers to easily pull up his team once he reaches the top, even with Cody's slip up, and they also wouldn't end up leaving Cody in the water when they do the boat portion, as Tyler would know what it's like to be forgotten, so would make sure no one else does, allowing them to keep their lead. And second would be Team Fabulous, as I don't see them having any particular struggles. And last would be Team Mama, who ends up in during the climbing section, but they end up forgetting Ezekiel as he falls out of the boat, forcing them to go back for him and waste time, ending up in third place. So, for myself to repeat, it's Team Dynamite is in first, Team Fabulous in second, and Team Mama is in third. The players in the carriages for the next part would be Cody, Noah, and Lindsay, which are the same as canon, just for the different teams. But as What's Not to Love About New York plays out, Team Fabulous would be super far behind, thanks to Leshawna's not so fabulous dancing, while no longer having the shortest path, ending up taking a long while thanks to it. Team Dynamite, on the other hand, would be having a pretty good time with having the fastest path and no distractions, so they're able to get the apple at Turtle Pond before the other teams even arrive. Team Mama would also be able to take a pretty clean second thanks to Team Fabulous's time loss, like I said, but they are pretty upset about losing their winning streak. Anyway, though, there's not much else that happens here and to talk about because even with Team Dynamite winning the reward, since they have the 3 members of Team Amazon who opened apples in the original, that would just happen with Tyler being present. I know I haven't talked too much about this episode just because there's not much going on. So, yeah. Team Dynamite ended up winning the reward, and it basically goes the same as Team Amazon's. Episode 6, or the Aftermath 1, DJ Over Troubled Water, is pretty vanilla thanks to no real drama going on in the season, as Bridget is still in the game, and Jeff would be thanking Courtney for once in his life about keeping his girl in line. So, with Jeff and Blaney as hosts, they would be able to interview Owen, Harold, and DJ, making each of them sing a song respectively. Harold would still sing Baby, and Owen would have a slight rendition of Oh My Izzy, but more about him seeing Alejandro wrapped around Izzy, basically them kissing up to each other, and Owen being sad about Izzy betraying him. Lastly, DJ would end up singing a song called Mama, a parody of the Mama I Killed a Man song, but more talking about the animals he's harmed. This would effectively end the changes to the aftermath, minus the total drama futures section only being about Duncan instead about being Duncan and Ezekiel because Ezekiel's still in the game. That ends the aftermath pretty boringly. Episode 7, or Slap Slap Revolution, starts off with an economy class where Team Fabulous and Team Mama are. Ezekiel will be complaining about how they're in economy class for the first time, while Leshawna pipes up talking about how they haven't even seen first class yet. With Courtney pointing out that's because they suck and haven't won a challenge yet, with Noah minorly joining in on the trash talk with Courtney, saying how Team Fabulous got an extra teammate for a reason. Leshawna gets pissed at the two and ends up trying to attack them, leading to Alejandro and Bridget trying to separate the fight and make sure that, no one gets beat up. Moving to first class, Cody's actually enjoying Sierra's presence as, although extremely affectionate, he's been able to get her to do exactly what he wants thanks to Sierra's obsession with him and being far more assertive in this timeline, with Cody basically ordering Sierra around everywhere. Tyler and Heather would both be talking, well, more so Heather is talking to Tyler about how toxic the relationship is, with how Sierra is changing almost everything about herself for the sake of the guy, in fact, just changing her outfit for Cody, and it's clear that Cody is just trying to make Sierra a Gwen 2.0 that's just obsessed with him. Heather would then say to Tyler that they need to vote one of them out and stop this before the situation goes out of hand. Well, she's mainly saying that to save her own ass from a future elimination, but still does think that it's partially true, so she's not lying here. Tyler would agree that Heather is right about Cody and Sierra's situation being a problem, but says that they can probably solve it by talking to them and they don't need to eliminate one of them. Heather would sigh and sort of agree, basically saying that she can work on Sierra and Tyler can try to work on Cody, but if nothing is getting through either their thick skulls, then they have to vote one of them out before the relationship becomes too problematic. Tyler and Heather would shake on it, agreeing to their plan, meaning that they would start trying to talk to Sierra and Cody in order to make them stop their weird relationship. Most of the story beats for the musical number before the challenge are pretty close to canon, minus the Owen section being replaced by Heather and Tyler trying to communicate with Sierra and Cody about the relationship respectively, but it ends up falling on deaf ears. Though Tyler would still end up cheering about Lindsay remembering him, causing the avalanche like canon. As the teams make their way up to the challenge, there would be some small moments of banter along the way, particularly with Cody and Sierra being obsessed with each other as Tyler's a concern, and Heather doesn't really care, and actually, based off the deal that she has with Tyler, wanting it to actively continue. Anyway, when it comes to the sausage making part of the challenge, Sierra would be making meat Cody's like in the original, but this time Cody would actually be playing along, posing for them and taking in all the praise Sierra gives him, leading to Tyler and Heather having to do all the work for their team in the challenge, resulting in them having a tiny sausage like Canon Team Amazon. Meanwhile, the other two teams would be doing pretty fine, but thanks to Izzy being a distraction for Team Fabulous trying to get into the meat grinder, and Bridget still being a pretty good leader right now, Team Mama is able to take first place once more. Also, Cody would have to wear the penalty hose in because his team would definitely get last, meaning Team Fabulous would end up in second place. So when it comes down to who goes for each team for the dancing part of the challenge, Team Mama would have Courtney, Bridget, and Ezekiel go, as even though Noah was going to go for the challenge, Ezekiel would be particularly wanting to prove himself, which Noah wouldn't mind as he is not a big fan of challenges anyway, so Ezekiel would take Noah's slot. Heather, Cody, and Sierra would all go for Team Dynamite as they went for the original Team Amazon, while Tyler didn't go for Team Chris in the original, so I have no reason to believe those three wouldn't compete. And lastly, Leshawna and Alejandro will be going for Team Fabulous as they're not only the people who competed in canon, but also the strongest members of their team. Also, second place only got two members, so Team Fabulous, who got second, also only gets two members. So yeah. The dancing part before the slapdown fight would basically just go the same, with Ezekiel making fun of the penalty hose instead of Noah, so we can just head to the matchups, which are shown on screen. Alejandro and Leshawna would easily be able to beat their opponents like they do in canon, and because Alejandro still beats Cody, Sierra is able to take down Bridget pretty easily. Lastly, though, is Heather versus Courtney, which is a bit tricky to tell, but I think Courtney's stronger, so I think she takes round one here. This means that Courtney, Sierra, Leshawna, and Alejandro move on to round two. So after round one, we would head to round two, where it sort of plays out like canon, with Courtney effectively taking Heather's place, missing tooth and all. It makes a lot of sense considering Courtney and Leshawna's mini rivalry and how Courtney was particularly pissing off Leshawna this morning, though the reaction from everyone would be slightly different. Sure, Courtney isn't perfect, and some people would cheer specifically Lindsay, but she certainly isn't a Heather, so someone like Bridget would be pretty mad at Leshawna for going so far. The thing is, though, Team Mama ends up losing because of Leshawna's actions anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Meanwhile, the other fight would be for first, with Alejandro and Sierra being a pretty close match going back and forth, until Cody tells Sierra to win it for him, making Sierra lock in and be able to beat Alejandro. This means that Team Dynamite wins first class, as Team Mama is sent to elimination. For the vote, it'd be pretty simple. Bridget and Courtney would vote for Ezekiel, as they not only see him as less useful than Noah, but also just like him less generally, as Noah actually joins in on the vote, voting for Ezekiel as well, as he thinks that with Bridget and Courtney's strength, he could possibly just end up gliding till merge as his best bet for survival, rather than dealing with Ezekiel to survive one more vote. And Ezekiel would end up voting for Courtney, but it doesn't really matter. There's not much else to say, as it's a pretty done deal. Ezekiel will be pretty confused on why he's going home, as in his eyes, Courtney lost a challenge, but Noah remarked that not only did Zeke fail the challenge first, but Courtney on the worst day performing in the challenge would be 100 times more useful than 100 Ezekiel's on his best day. Courtney would laugh at the joke, with Bridget feeling a bit bad for the guy as Ezekiel leaves in a huff. But he ends up grabbing to the landing gear on the plane like he did in the original episode, or his original elimination episode. Episode 8, or the Amazon race, opens up with Courtney having her black eye, looking pretty pissed as Leshawna mocks her from across economy class, with Courtney biting back, saying how Leshawna must be so proud of herself for causing her team to lose back in Germany. Courtney pointing out if Leshawna didn't go so extra on beating Courtney up, Leshawna could have probably beaten Sierra and gotten the precious first class she wanted. Lashana would then bite back too, saying that if Courtney didn't talk so much smack, she wouldn't have a black eye right now. The two end up bickering even more, resulting in Alejandro and Bridget having to split up the fight once more. Meanwhile, in first class, it's more of the same as last episode, with Sierra at this point being fully goth, and Cody totally digging the look. I mean, why wouldn't he? He picked out the look for her. Cody would then have a confessional saying that he has to thank Harold for the idea that he gave him back in episode 2, as it's been working perfectly so far and has made Sierra a whole lot more tolerable and a whole lot more attractive. Tyler and Heather look on even more concerned than they were the last episode. Well, Tyler's more concerned. Heather's actually happy because that means that Tyler's likely to vote for Sierra or Cody. After the teams land in the Amazon, Chris would allow Sierra to take Cody's EpiPen as he explains the challenge, with Sierra taking it in this time because Cody would have allowed it here. And the teams would start heading off into the Amazon. Team Fabulous would end up arriving to the crossroads first and end up going left, thanks to Lindsay's suggestion. And Team Dynamite would follow them shortly after, thanks to Tyler. As for Team Mama, though, I have no idea where they go, so I'm just going to assume they go right for the sake of not having everyone go the same direction, able to have multiple storylines go on. For the people who went on the left path, Team Fabulous would end up showing to the T-bar first, and Alejandro, using his skills of balance that he had in the original Egypt episode, would be able to somehow fit his entire team on the T-bar. I don't know how, it's Alejandro, let's be real, and would be able to get them able to cross safely without any troubles. Meanwhile, Team Dynamite would end up arriving soon after, and all figure out their ways to cross without the T-bar. Tyler would just do what he does in canon, Heather uses her belt on her shorts, and Sierra would carry Cody and herself on the end, using her belt as well. Meanwhile, on the right path, Team Mama would be having the time of their lives thanks to being captured by the Zing Zings. Although no one has batteries because why would they? So once they realize that their walkie-talkie is useless without them, Bridget would try to kindly ask the Zing Zings if they have any, which Noah would obviously make a comment about. Seriously, Bridget? You think an uncontacted tribe would know what the heck you're saying, let alone have batteries? Their language doesn't likely even have a word for. He then would get cut off by the Zing Zing slash actors, giving Bridget batteries so they can talk to Chris, with Noah smacking his lips. Well, I guess I stand corrected. After that, though, Bridget would put the batteries in the walkie-talkie to call Chris in distress about the Zing Zings. But Chris would make them sing a song, which is the same gypsy rap as canon, but the song would only have 3 people on Team Mama left, because there's only 3 people there. It ends with a solo being Courtney, this time when she's revealed to be a god with her missing tooth, meaning that Courtney is now the one with the gold tooth, and she would have a sort of similar confessional to Heather originally, talking about how Courtney knew that she was always going to have people worshipping her. Panning back to the other path, Team Fabulous is still in first and would end up getting the banana reward that Team Victory got in the original. They also generally follow Team Victory's story throughout the rest of the episode. Meanwhile, Team Dynamite would end up sort of following the path of Team Chris, getting attacked by the bug things, the weird demon caterpillars, and Sierra is able to fight them off thanks to her love of Cody, as we've seen her fight off monkeys for Cody, so I don't see why this would be different. Though Heather ends up getting dragged off by them thanks to no one really caring for her. Back to Team Mama, although Courtney is enjoying being treated nicely by the Zing Zings, she wants to win the challenge, so would order them to free Noah and Bridget so they can take them to Machu Picchu as fast as possible. The actors end up being forced to comply thanks to Courtney's bossy attitude, but it gives Team Mama a massive leg up on the race as they're able to travel safely at night as they got the Zing Zings defending them, allowing them to catch down from the previous slowdown. Team Fabulous would end up making their way to Machu Picchu first and would start looking for the treasure, as Team Dynamite arrives shortly after, but they're missing Heather. The team would ask if they have to go back for her, as it's Heather, but Sierra eventually reluctantly does. After that, though, Team Mama then would arrive and would start looking for the treasure as well, and the section would just end up turning into a Team Mama versus Team Fabulous fight for first class. But considering Team Fabulous is not only more people, but also got the original person who found the treasure being Lindsay there, I'm pretty confident to say Team Fabulous gets first, and Team Dynamite would face elimination. It's not elimination because it's a non elimination, but since they were the last to make it up to the mountain, they lost. Well, they're last of their full team making it to the mountain. Despite this being a non elimination, there's still a good bit to talk about thanks to the votes being public. Tyler and Heather would end up following through on their plan to vote one of the Lovebirds, landing on Sierra thanks to Tyler sort of still being friends with Cody. And Codera would end up voting for Heather because who else are they going to vote for? Although Sierra and Cody's confessionals are pretty simple and not that important, the other two's are a whole lot more interesting to go through. The first of the two we would see is Tyler, who would hesitate a bit hovering over Heather's passport before swapping his vote to Sierra like they planned and state how he's doing this both for Sierra and Cody's own good. Afterwards, though, would be Heather, who would go on a rant about how Sierra's being stupid for letting Cody turn her into a Gwen 2.0, and that she needs to look into the mirror and get a reality check. Cody doesn't love her. He just loves Gwen and is making Sierra into Gwen. Sierra would be shocked by the end of the confessional and what Heather said, asking Cody if it's true, but when Cody tries to deny it, he ends up accidentally saying Gwen's name instead of Sierra's. This causes Sierra to run off in tears, realizing the truth and her new mascara running down her face as she does so. Chris would then announce that this is a non elimination, which Heather has a sigh of relief because she didn't want to deal with a tiebreaker, but Cody's running off to try to talk to Sierra himself and explain himself, which would end the episode on a somewhat interesting note. Episode 9, or Can't Help Falling in Louvre, starts with a brief, non important scene in first class before panning to economy class where everything is going on. Sierra is in a messed up state, to say the least, as she has her normal outfit back, but her hair is still stained thanks to the hair dye, and is now shoveling ice cream down her throat. As Bridget, who I may mind you is on the other team, would be helping her out, as none of her teammates can even come near her ass. Cody would be trying to blame Tyler and Heather for all this happening, and particularly upset at Tyler because he thought they were friends. But Heather would just end up calling him out for being a manipulative piece of shit, with both Noah and Courtney kind of agreeing that what Cody did by trying to make Sierra into Gwen the sequel is pretty messed up. This makes Cody start to question if he was going too far, as Izzy starts doing her usual Izzy stuff and makes the plane land in the water. After the cast lands in Paris, the challenge would be introduced and each team gets a statues, replacing the team that they got the reward in Egypt, meaning that Team Dynamite would get Team Victory statue, Team Mama gets Team Chris's statue, and Team Fabulous would get Team Amazon's. So now that's settled and I explained that, Chris would release the animals on all of them and the challenge would begin. Team Dynamite would start looking for their pieces, but they have to deal with the press to Sierra and a baby seal chasing after them. But thanks to none of them directly attacking it, it'd be probably more docile than the original, but not by much. As the team is looking around and Sierra's depressed as fuck, Heather's getting annoyed and is about to make Cody fix Sierra, but Tyler actually volunteers to do it instead, as he thinks he actually knows how he can talk to Sierra and make her get over this. Not get over it, but talk to her and explain some things. Neither of them don't really care as long as someone deals with it, and Cody would thank Tyler for not having to deal with Sierra after what he did. So, Cody and Heather would be the only ones doing the challenge for their team. During this time, though, Heather would start fear mongering to Cody about voting Sierra, which would work pretty well. After a brief scene of Team Fabulous grabbing their pieces, we would move to Team Mama, who are dealing with the lasers that Team Chris had to deal with in canon. But Courtney quite literally did this in the Spy Movie Challenge last season and was able to do it without any problems. So I imagine she basically just does the same thing here, able to easily avoid all the lasers and grab the piece without a problem. With that, and Noah distracting the Yeti pretty easily thanks to the ball trick he was doing, despite them having the smallest team, well, they don't have the smallest team competing right now, but besides the point, they're able to find their pieces extremely quickly because of all of them working really well together as a trio. Panning back to Team Dynamite, or at least part of them, Sierra would be crying her eyes out as Tyler approaches trying to check up on her. Sierra would then turn to him upset, and as she asks why does Tyler want to help her of all people as he voted for her last episode. Tyler's about to give his explanation on why he wants to help her, but Chris would butt in and make Tyler do his explanation in song. He would grumble but do it anyway, leading to a song called If Love Is True. This would be a Tyler and Sierra duet, mainly Tyler focused though, about a song with Tyler singing to Sierra about how love, both true and toxic, can be, and how Sierra can still like Cody, but it's kind of clear that the relationship won't be healthy for both sides in the long run. He would also bring up several other total drama relationships from the show in order to have some comedic moments as part of the song, pointing out how what makes love true is very different for some people, and also allow for some slight foreshadowing in the future about how some couples of the show and how they end up changing slash being made, mostly with Al Heather foreshadowing and also how Dunkney turns into Glunkin. Although Sierra would reject the idea of the song at first, it goes on. She would see Tyler's point and eventually join him on the final verse, accepting that her and Cody maybe not just may not be meant to be. Sure, she likes Cody a lot, like a lot. But after what happened, maybe it's best that they just stay friends or best friends or whatever, as she doesn't want to turn into someone else again, or Gwen, of all people. Yuck. Anyway, moving back to the actual challenge, thanks to Team Dynamite only having two members doing the challenge the entire time, they are likely to get their statue pieces last. And because I feel like the teams would have very separate times for finishing their pieces and starting their puzzles, Team Mama being faster than Team Fabulous and Team Fabulous being faster than Team Dynamite, because Team Mama would have no distractions, so they would be able to finish super fast. It would lead to no pieces being mixed up because no two teams finish at the same time and get their statue pieces mixed up, making sure that Team Dynamite ends up losing, as Lindsay was able to make a statue by herself in canon, and Courtney and Noah's intelligence combined seems like a really massive advantage in a puzzle challenge. As for who wins, though, I will go with Team Fabulous, mainly thanks to also other smart people like Alejandro being able to help Lindsay build the statue. Team Dynamite heads to elimination. For the vote, like last episode, it ends up in a tie between Heather and Sierra, but it's for different reasons this time. Tyler and Sierra are now the people to vote for Heather, as Tyler doesn't feel like he has to fulfill his year with Heather anymore about voting one of the lovebirds, as he thinks he's solved the issue. Meanwhile, Heather and Cody end up voting for Sierra, as Heather would have been working Cody the entire episode, manipulating him into thinking Sierra is going to be super pissed by the time she ends up feeling better about Cody and everything, or is going to act even more stalkerish and obsessive. Because of that, Cody would end up voting for Sierra, and that leads to the tie. But since there is a tie here, the walk off from the original episode can still commence between Heather and Sierra this time. For the tiebreaker, Sierra picks Cody and Heather picks Alejandro to be their models for the challenge, with the judges being Lindsay, Courtney, and Chris. As for the challenge and the general talks before the modeling actually begins, Sierra would be tracking to Cody about how their whole relationship turned out, with Cody apologizing for how he turned her into Gwen, basically, and Sierra kind of apologizing, half apologizing for being so obsessive, as Tyler would have talked to her and kind of made her realize, okay, maybe I should have gone a little too far. A little's an understatement, but it's at least something. Anyway, this would effectively make them at their episode 24 counterpart versions, at least the relationship wise. Meanwhile, Al Heather would be having their usual flirty and argumentative banter like normal, being on full force now that Alejandro is no longer being seen by anyone. Heather would dress Alejandro, and Alejandro would make a remark that, of course, Heather wants to dress him. When it comes to results of the modeling challenge, however, I end up leaning towards Heather winning for a few reasons. One, Cody and Sierra would have been distracted for a good while thanks to their talk. Two, Heather's just more generally fashion savvy. And three, Alejandro's hot, while Cody is Cody. After Sierra is revealed to have lost, she would say goodbye to Cody and thank Tyler for the time they spent together today, saying that Tyler doesn't deserve to be the most forgotten TV contestant. Tyler would chuckle, agreeing with that fact, and Sierra would take the drop of shame as Cody looks on, a little sad because he kinda caused her elimination. Tyler would pat him on the back, saying, "It's fine," just kind of being nice, showing the two's friendship a little bit more. Episode 10, or New Kids on the Romp, begins in first class where Team Fowler's is chilling once again, and Alejandro's doing his usual flirtation with the girls on his team. Minus Gwen, who's busy doing her own thing, and Lindsay, who dragged Tyler in the first class to be distracted with. Heading to economy class, though, Heather would be noticing the numbers team on Team Dynamite and Team Mama are pretty low compared to Team Fabulous. So, like how she wanted to work with DJ in the original episode for the sake of numbers, she would want to work with Team Mama to work against Team Fabulous together. So, she would offer them a deal once they're all in economy class, well, besides Tyler, who's not there. Although Bridget is unsure of working with Heather, Courtney and Noah would be pretty down with this idea, as Courtney wants to take down Leshawna after getting a black eye from her, and Noah wants to do it for the sake of his team not losing again, because if they lose, he's pretty confident he's going home. So the two are able to convince Bridget to do this, which makes her agree, and Courtney would highlight that this is probably the best decision that they can make for their team, and Bridget should make it as a leader, which Bridget agrees to do so, like I said. After everyone gets dragged out in the water, Chris would explain the challenge, but no teams have a motor as no team has an extreme numbers disadvantage over everyone else. So Chris would start the challenge as Heather orders both Team Mama and Team Dynamite to get on the same boat, with Tyler getting confused on why they're doing it. with Heather explaining to him about how they're teaming up with Team Mama. Although Tyler is heavily against it thanks to it being teaming up against his girlfriend, Heather wouldn't care and tell Tyler to suck it up or get kicked off the plane at the next destination. So he complies, although he does feel pretty bad about it. So note, Team Mama and Team Dynamite are on the same boat. After Alejandro gets annoyed at seeing that Team Mama and Team Dynamite are obviously teaming up, the challenge would start and the song would remain pretty much the same as the original, just with the new people in place of the old ones. Gwen would end up seeing the Duncan rock like she did in canon, distracting her team and making them see what the heck is Duncan doing up there, resulting in them end up losing time and Team Mama and Team Dynamite being able to move on to the next part. Alejandro, though, does notice how badly Gwen wants to see Duncan because of this excursion and would take note of it once again for later. Moving to the next part where Team Mama and Team Dynamite are, each team has to do a classic Newfoundland relay, and first to finish would win. To start with the cider vinegar thing, Cody and Courtney would be drinking it, and Courtney, generally being a beast of challenges, is able to do it first and allow Noah to start guessing the phrase that he has to hear, which he struggles to do so like canon. Cody then finishes his cider as Heather starts guessing, but Noah, thinking about the phrase for longer, is able to get it first, making Bridget have to start kissing the fish. Then Heather afterwards would get a new phrase, allowing Tyler to get the final part of kissing the fish. And by this point, though, Courtney would have gotten Bridget to kiss the fish by thinking of Jeff, but she actually imagined Alejandro while doing it, which makes Bridget worry and confessional. This means that Team Mama wins reward and is revealed to be a reward challenge to Team Fabulous, who celebrate about not voting someone out, as Team Mama and Team Dynamite grumble as their team up didn't work. Episode 11, Jamaican Me Sweat, has Team Mama in first class where they are chilling, and Noah tries to talk to Chris about potentially merging Team Dynamite and Team Mama together if both teams agree to do so, with Chris revealing that there's no more team swaps, let alone team merges in sight, alongside the fact that a merge is not soon. This makes Noah a good bit worried, as knowing how close Courtney and Bridget are, they're likely to vote him out if they lose, but he just has to hope that the team of a Team Dynamite is enough to keep both of their teams safe and Team Dallas to keep on losing. Or, if they end up failing, Team Dynamite has to be the one who loses. After that, we would see Bridget and Courtney talking about how Bridget saw Alejandro while kissing the fish and not Jeff, which makes Bridget worried. Though Courtney would tell her not to focus on boys and focus on the game, as she would totally not get distracted by dumb boys like Bridget is right now. Moving to economy class, Lindsay and Tyler are enjoying each other's company once again, and all is going well on the plane. Well, until they run out of gas and they start falling from the sky. Lindsay decides then it's the perfect time to go skydiving, dragging Leshawna against her will alongside her, like she did in the bike episode where she dragged Leshawna on a massive side quest, meaning the two are crushed by the plane and injured before the challenge starts, and Izzy will be shortly medically evacuated. But that technically doesn't happen yet. Moving to the first part of the challenge, the main people who are doing dives for each team are Tyler for Team Dynamite, Bridget for and Courtney for Team Mama, and Alejandro for Team Fabulous, but generally all the team is alternating between each other, at least everyone who's left for Team Fabulous. Everyone starts diving with Alejandro distracting both Bridget and Heather, the former while she's diving, and the latter while he comes up from the water, just using his usual flirtation stuff. After that, though, Gwen would end up finding a change eventually, like she did in canon, getting shocked by the eels, but since Alejandro's now part of her team, he can't jump in to save her by tagging someone else. So instead, Bridget would. After that, she saves Gwen, and Heather would steal the chains from Gwen, as Bridget wouldn't have stolen them herself because she was too busy helping Gwen, meaning that Team Dynamite ends up getting the helmets, and Gwen would head to the infirmary. Speaking of the infirmary, we get to see Izzy be medevaced as Leshawna says good riddance to the girl, happy to be rid of her because, Izzy shoved her off a plane. Gwen would point out that they still lost a teammate, but Leshawna would roll her eyes. Teammate? More like that mate was a pain in my... She then gets cut off by the requirement for the two to sing a song, which turns Oh My Izzy into Good Riddance Izzy, which instead of being a sweet love song with Owen missing Izzy, it's a Leshawna-style diss track rap song on Izzy, with Gwen having background parts like she was able to rap well in gypsy rap in canon. After the first round, though, Leshawna would be cleared to compete, which she would do so, and Gwen would have to recover the infirmary alone, being out for the rest of the challenge like she was in the original. For the first round, where Leshawna is technically still in the infirmary, Lindsay and Alejandro go for Team Fabulous, Bridget and Courtney go for Team Mama, and Tyler and Cody go for Team Dynamite. Lindsay and Alejandro would go about as well as Tyler and Alejandro in canon, just doing slightly worse. Bridget and Courtney would be doing really well, as both are athletic and have solid synergy together. They end up having about the same time that DJ had in canon. Then afterwards would be Cody and Tyler, who end up doing pretty bad thanks to Tyler, as I don't see Cody being the reason why his team is super fast in canon, and Tyler was slowing down Alejandro pretty significantly. This results in the order for first place being Team Mama, then Team Fabulous in second, and last would be Team Dynamite. After this round, though, Leshawna is able to come back and be able to compete. The second round would have Heather and Cody, Noah and Courtney, and Alejandro and Lashawna competing for their teams. Lashawna and Alejandro would be able to do really well, as Alejandro compliments how great of a team him and Lashawna make, which Lashawna would blush at. Afterwards, Alejandro smirks and has a confessional saying that having one of the strongest players under his thumb is really useful to have. Moving on, though, Noah and Courtney would do fine as Courtney carries Noah, and Heather and Cody would be doing average, which isn't enough to take them out of last, but would be better than Tyler and Cody last round. In fact, none of the placement change, as just the gap between first and second becomes a bit closer, and the gap between second and third becomes a bit wider. The final round is Lashana and Alejandro, Courtney and Bridget, and Heather and Cody. First would be Team Fabulous, which would be doing pretty well, as the duo once again is pretty athletic and pretty good at this type of challenge. They result and end up shaving off a few seconds from their first time. And thanks to Alejandro not believing his team will lose thanks to Team Dynamite's mediocrity, he would no longer have a reason to sabotage the board to screw a team over, which would be Team Mama in this case, but again, he doesn't have a reason to do it anymore because why risk getting caught? This means the round can play out pretty normally, leading to Bridget and Courtney doing well, but not well enough to pass over Team Fabulous's new combined time, as even with them being pretty good at this challenge, Lashana's extra weight and general challenge ability is enough for me to say her and Alejandro can beat Bridget and Courtney here. Meanwhile, Team Dynamite would do fine, but it's not enough for them to pass anyone, so it means that Team Fabulous wins first class and Team Dynamite heads to a vote. For the vote, it's pretty easy to figure out. Cody and Tyler easily vote Heather here. Even if Heather tries to convince Cody that Tyler sucks at challenges and they need to vote him as a two-person team, Cody is too close to Tyler to be able to vote for anyone else, as I doubt he can be swayed, or Tyler for that matter. So they both vote Heather, and Heather is eliminated. Heather's exit would be extremely better, as she lashes out on Tyler and Cody, saying that they'll rule the day and they'll be gone before they know it without her. Tyler says confidently, though, that him and Cody can make it just fine without her, and tries to stand up doing a handstand to do a trick to prove his point, but ends up failing in Tyler fashion. This makes Heather roll her eyes as she jumps on the sand and makes a fake ass scream, faker than her pony hair extensions, before the real screams come with the fire ants coming. Episode 12 for the Aftermath 2, Revenge of the Telephone, plays out with Blaney and Jeff still being the hosts since Bridget is still in the season. As the song Save the Show would also play out pretty close to the original, just Blaney taking Bridget's place. Though with an extra person gone, it might be a bit more of a challenge to save the show. The thing is though, Sierra, the first person being interviewed, is already up to the task. With her superfan knowledge, she knows exactly what fans are willing to pay up for. Personal items of their favorite contestants. In canon, Sierra mentions how she was planning on doing a charity auction after the season was over with all the items she got from Total Drama. But who cares about saving cancer patients or orphans when Total Drama itself is on the line here, folks? This makes the first part basically focused on Sierra giving away items for cash for extremely high values. All of them are pretty weird and extremely questionable on how she got in the first place, but who cares? It's saving the show. This ends up racking up a ton of cash, with a few of the top selling items being Courtney's dislodged tooth, a spare pair of Cody's underwear that Sierra stole a long time ago, and the bestseller, Chris's used hair gel, which is bought by her mom as a fun cameo. This would be also paired with a musical number called Buy It Up, a Sierra focused song about her selling items to the highest bidders and rallying up people to buy. Thanks to her sales, Sierra is able to actually make three-fourths of the cash already within the first section. Jeff would be surprised, but thanks Sierra that even if she's psycho, Jeff can acknowledge when someone knows how to work an audience. Next up would be Heather, though, who would rather just see all those people melt in Jamaica and thus would try actively not to help. Though Sierra already has an idea on how they can use her to get some money, which she would whisper to Jeff. Jeff would smile, laughing, saying, "Damn, Sierra is really good at this." Jeff then decides to go with the plan, ordering DJ to grab and tie up Heather, which he would begrudgingly do, leading to our next session being called Cash for a Bash. People give money for Heather to get beaten up in a variety of comedic ways. This would sell like hotcakes, as people hate Heather in this world, and Heather gets beaten to a pulp in a variety of comedic slapsticky ways. This allows them to meet their goal already, and hell, even far beyond that, with time left to spare. At this point, they even have enough cash to upgrade the Aftermath studio. Jeff would thank Sierra for knowing how to run a show and offer her a slot to co-host on the Aftermath for the rest of the season, which Sierra would of course excitedly accept. Blaney would ask who is going to be replaced, as three's kind of a crowd, but Jeff would smile, telling her that after the episode ends, she's going to be having to do a ton of interviews with superfans that she'll have to go on around soon, so Sierra will be basically replacing Blaney. Also, if you're wondering, yes, Brainsell is technically still present because Jeff didn't use his final gambit about saving the show with the whole demon quiz show thing, but that can be fixed by a head bog on screen in between aftermaths anyway, so we're going to ignore that fact. Episode 13, or I See London, we open to everyone in economy class with Leshawna being pretty vocal about how her team should be in first class, as they won last episode. Gwen would also be suffering from her sunburnt hair, which Bridget would help her out with, or get Courtney to help her out with, as I can see Bridget being able to know the whole thing with the sunburn hand because lifeguard, surfer person, pretty used to sunburns. It makes sense to me. Or Courtney would do it just for the sake of getting allies to merge. Anyway, after that, everyone started talking and just chatting, speculating what the challenge will be, with no one getting captured this time because no one has a reason to get captured because Alejandro doesn't walk off without Owen or Noah, being present. Well, Noah's present, but Owen isn't. Skipping the bus intermission as nothing happens there, the people who are stripping the guard during the musical number would be Cody, Noah, and Gwen. The main reason why Cody is doing it because Tyler and Lindsay decided to go on a small little escapade in London, as both of them, being a little dumb, decided this moment is a perfect moment for a date now that Tyler doesn't have to deal with Heather, and Lindsay and him on been on separate teams for a while and just want to hang out. So they would start sneaking around London as a mini subplot for the episode. Anyway, in the order who finishes for each of the teams, Noah will get lucky with his clue being under the hat, then Gwen would finish, and lastly Cody. So the teams would head to their next destination without many issues, no one getting captured. Although Lindsay and Tyler are technically going on their side quests, they're technically still in the challenge. Moving on to the torture rack section on Team Dynamite, Cody gets stretched by Chef thanks to him being solo during the time of this happening. Then Team Mama would show up with Bridget volunteering to get stretched as she doesn't want to see anyone on her team get hurt again. Also, is just naturally flexible thanks to being a surfer. Lastly, for Team Fabulous, Alejandro would force Gwen to go once again because he would have forced her to do stripping the guard, which is why she did it in this timeline. And Gwen would be pretty annoyed at being the work mule at this point, pointing out how she's been doing most of the work for the challenge. Alejandro would just try to gaslight her, saying that Gwen's just making up for last challenge where she was absent. Gwen would roll her eyes and decide to suck it up, though, getting stretched and eventually getting the clue. Meanwhile, while all this torture is happening, Lindsay and Tyler are having a pretty lovely time exploring London, as Jack the Ripper somehow keeps on repeatedly fumbling, catching them over and over and over again. Entirely by accident, Lindsay keeps on dodging attacks by accident. Anyway, everyone moves on to the banquet hall with no one getting captured still. Gee, it's like this guy really sucks for some reason. At the banquet hall, Cody's forced to go on a solo heist mission for the clue, which result in him getting it, but because he's a bit too loud, he ends up getting mauled by the corgis in the process. Though, after a few bites, he's at least able to figure out that he needs to go to the double-decker bus for his final hint. Based off his natural intelligence, he'd be able to figure out pretty quickly. Team Mama would just be their usual three-player trio that they've been having for the past few episodes, enjoying each other's company and are able to grab the clue pretty easily thanks to Bridget's abilities with animals. Noah would figure out the clues for the double-decker bus pretty quickly as well, allowing them to head there as well, like Cody does. Lastly, for Team Fabulous, Alejandro would volunteer to watch guard for the girls as they go into the banquet hall, which they would accept and are able to get to the clue thanks to Gwen's trick from Canon. But as Gwen and Leshawna end up walking out, they see that Jack finally got his first victim in this timeline, being Alejandro still. Anyway, the duo would read the clue and Gwen still misinterprets it like she does in the original, leading them to go to where Team Amazon did in canon. Cody would arrive at the double decker bus first and would encounter Jack the Ripper. He would be pretty excited to win and he would try to grab the bag to capture him, but it's missing. Huh? Where the heck did it go? You would then pan to see a scene of Lindsay and Tyler using that bag for Lindsay's shopping escapade trip of stupidity. This ends up resulting in Cody getting captured thanks to that mishap, as he screams, getting captured by Ezekiel after many, many attempts. Panning over to Gwen and Leshawna, Gwen decides now is the time to bring up her suspicions to Alejandro to Leshawna, now that the two are alone together. Leshawna would be a bit surprised that Gwen thinks all this stuff, but Gwen would point out how much malice that Alejandro had during the Owen boot and how his flirtation's kind of like Justin's from last season, and he could easily be faking it for the sake of getting ahead. Leshawna wouldn't want to believe it though, but is willing to slightly keep an eye on Alejandro. An eye to ogle, but still an eye. Anyway, they would realize that they're kind of screwed over because Gwen read the clue wrong, and they decide to bring back Duncan back, like Courtney and Gwen do in the original, as Chris wanted the criminal. Lastly, in the final scene, before the challenge ends, Team Mama would encounter Jack the Ripper as he tries to aggressively capture all three of them in one fell swoop, but ends up completely failing, tripping on his own cloak and ending up directly in front of the trio, allowing them to catch Jack the Ripper with ease. The trio would high five and walk back to the plane as Lindsay and Tyler do the same after their date on the town, just kind of having a good time and having a bag full of goodies. After each of the teams come back with their filled bags, they each reveal what they have inside of them. Lindsay slash Tyler slash Team Dynamite's bag has a ton of random clothes and souvenirs, but hey, they got a Jack the Ripper bobblehead, so that should count for something, right? Right? Anyway, Team Mama afterwards revealed they actually caught Jack the Ripper, which is revealed to be a not yet feral Ezekiel, which is why he was much weaker than the canon version of feral Ezekiel here. And also, the reason why he's in feral is because he had a way less time to become feral, so I don't think he would become feral yet. Anyway, Gwen and Leshawna also end up revealing that they have Duncan, giving them the win as a result. But hey, Team Mom is still safe and get Duncan back as a consolation prize, which Courtney would be pretty willing to take, even though she's annoyed about losing. Meanwhile, Team Dynamite ends up being in a sudden death elimination as they only have two players left. This tiebreaker is a murder mystery puzzle, which the two must solve, and the first to do so would be safe. The two start solving the case, but Cody, using his natural intelligence, would be able to solve it first and win the tiebreaker, meaning now he is the last member of Team Dynamite left. Lindsay comes to say goodbye as she feels bad for her shopping trip costing Tyler the game, but Tyler would say that he doesn't regret it and enjoyed spending the time together today. Lindsay would call this moment sweet and is about to kiss him, but Chris cockblocks it like he did in canon with Lindsay's original elimination, so Tyler just quickly jumps. It's a little sad for Lindsay, but whatever. But that's not the end of the episode yet, thanks to the Gwonkin kiss still happening. Though instead of Tyler showing up, thanks to Tyler literally just being chucked off the plane, he can't. Lindsay ends up being the person who shows up as she was just about to have a confessional, being sad about Tyler going home. Thanks to that, she's now the one to see the kiss in this timeline, and the episode would end after that. Episode 14, or Grease's Pieces, has first class with two duos, that being Gwen and Leshawna and Lindsay and Alejandro. Gwen and Leshawna talk as a duo while Alejandro tries to figure out what's wrong with Lindsay, who is shaken up thanks to Duncan's threat about exposing the kiss last night. When Alejandro questions her, Lindsay tries to say it's just something related to Tyler, but accidentally slips it's something related to Duncan, and she would run off before she spills any more, worried that Duncan's going to kill her. This makes Alejandro very suspicious, even more so considering what Gwen said back in Newfoundland, so he kind of already has an idea what's going on. Moving to economy class, Courtney is trying to do couple stuff with Duncan, but Duncan isn't reciprocating. While Bridget and Noah both notice this, Bridget just kind of assumes that Duncan is in the mood, but Noah sees this as something he could possibly use to make sure he isn't going home next time his team loses, so would plan to investigate what's going on between Duncan and Courtney. We head to the challenge, and the first part is the scavenger hunt, with Cody forced to go because he's a solo team, and Gwen and Duncan volunteering at the same time like canon. This leads to the original song Greek Mix playing out sort of close to canon, just Cody acting as a third wheel and background singer. There's also one important change from canon, and that's Noah joining Alejandro as he spies on the song. Both of them end up bumping into each other midway through it and realize that they're doing the same thing, so they decide to agree to tell each other the information they have and work together on this plan to expose Duncan and Gwen. Even if Noah doesn't trust Alejandro, he isn't going to say it to his face and wants this out so he can save himself. Anyway, even with Cody here, the result is the same, and Gwen ends up taking the medal from the Boar Bear, getting the first point for Team Fabulous. Next is the Partigan fight where Courtney, Leshawna, and Cody compete. The two girls will start scrapping, intensifying their rivalry from earlier this season, just going fully ham on each other and beating each other up. Cody would be trying to join on the fight, but gets absolutely punted by Leshawna, who sends him blasting off again with a basic slap. The fight would go on for quite a while and be very, very close, but I personally lean to Leshawna winning here. Sure, Courtney's athletic, but Leshawna has brute strength alongside the fact that, Leshawna also outperforms Courtney in the $1 Million Babies episode, so I think it's pretty clear she wins. She would celebrate by taunting Courtney, who would growl in frustration. As Leshawna gets the medal, that means that's 2 points for Team Fabulous, and they've secured first class. Meaning it's Cody versus Mama in the hurdles to decide who's going to go up for elimination. In the hurdle race, Cody would go once again as Bridget goes for her team. The race goes on, and it's pretty clear that Bridget's in the lead, and Alejandro debates getting Lindsay to expose Duncan's secret here because could distract Bridget and save Cody, though he elects it to not be worth it, and he'd rather save the moment for once his team is in danger and not Cody, of all people. So the race is allowed to play out as normal, which leads to Bridget winning. Sure, she's a bit clumsy, but she's athletic enough for me to say she can beat Cody, as that's not really that hard to do. Anyway, Bridget gets the medal and celebrates as Cody sighs, knowing he's going home. And thanks to Cody not being related to any drama, he's in fact is going to be eliminated, and this doesn't turn into a non-elimination episode, so that'll be safe for later. Cody would take the drop of shame, pretty sad, and that means Team Dynamite is officially defused. Hey, they lasted 3 more episodes from Team Victory in canon, so that's something at least. Episode 15, or The X-Files, begins with Alejandro and Noah meeting up to discuss when is the right time to expose the drama with Gwen, Duncan, and Courtney, with both agreeing to do it during today's challenge. So the chaos allows either of them to slip by in a vote with Gwen or Duncan likely going home, and neither of them having to deal with any risk. Afterwards, Alejandro then offers for the cooperation to go even farther, making a final two deal. Alejandro would do this because he sees Noah's weak physicality as a really nice treat to go to the finale with, either him or Lindsay, who could likely give him the win. Noah would accept this in front of his face, but say afterwards in confessional that Noah doesn't plan on working with that eel long term. Noah just wants to work with Alejandro to get himself further in the game. After that, not much else interesting happens, so we can just head to them going to Area 51. Once they land, Chris explains the challenge and Duncan gets blasted by the laser and cannon, leading to Gwen and this time Courtney, both shouting in concern, which Courtney would get annoyed at Gwen for doing. But after that, the challenge would officially start. The team start traveling, with Team Mama taking Team Chris's original route and Team Fabulous taking the same route that Team Amazon did. Duncan would solve the problem the way he does in Canon, and Team Fabulous would struggle for a bit, trying to figure out what to do as the lizard shows up, leading to them being in the middle of the flying field. And Chris starting the song. This song is called Stepping Around Lies, as the truth about the boyfriend kissing hasn't been exposed yet. The song mainly focuses on Alejandro trying to fully coax the truth out of Lindsay, as Gwen sees that and tries to stop it by any means necessary. Gwen ends up by doing this by chucking a souvenir that Lindsay got in London and a bomb to distract everyone, and indirectly leads them to figuring out a way out of the minefield and a path into Area 51. The teams arrive in Area 51 with no one getting captured this time as the teams split into pairs, with Noah and Courtney going together plus Bridget and Duncan for Team Mama, and Gwen and Lindsay going together plus Leshawna and Alejandro for Team Fabulous. The first pair we would look at is Noah and Courtney, where Courtney's partly confused and annoyed at Noah for dragging her off, with Noah then talking about how Noah thinks, more so knows, Duncan is cheating on her. Courtney would obviously not want to believe that, but Noah would tell her to look at the signs right in front of her face and point out all the evidence that's been happening for the past few days. Even if you don't believe me, you can ask Lindsay. She apparently has been keeping a secret for Duncan already. Perhaps it's related to him and Gwen. Courtney, curious and pissed at the idea of Duncan cheating on her, would do that and just walk off, leading Noah to look for an artifact on his own. After Courtney and Noah, the next pair you see is Alejandro and Leshawna, with Alejandro being his usual flirty self and Leshawna head over heels. It's not too important what they're talking about, but what it is important is that they end up finding an artifact along the way, so start heading back looking for their teammates. After that, we pan to see Bridget and Duncan, who are having some minor back and forth banter, but they eventually end up finding an artifact, so they would start looking for Courtney and Noah. They're able to find Noah pretty quickly, but Courtney's nowhere in sight. The last group we see is Gwen and Lindsay, as it focuses on Gwen trying to make sure Lindsay doesn't say anything about the secret with her and Duncan. Lindsay would say the secret's totally safe with her, but once Courtney shows up and asks kindly to Lindsay about the secret, saying that, she should know because she is Duncan's boyfriend, Lindsay would immediately spill. Oh, the secret I'm keeping for Duncan is that I saw Gwen and Duncan kissing the confet. Gwen covers Lindsay's mouth before she can finish, but it's far too late. Courtney would instantly get pissed and right hook Gwen before storming off to look for Duncan. Lindsay would apologize for Gwen making her facepalm, as Alejandro and Leshawna finally meet up with the two, and they start leaving with their artifact. Gwen praying that she doesn't get screwed over because Lindsay decided to open her mouth. The other three members on Team Mama are at the entrance, with Duncan asking where the heck Courtney is, with Noah sarcastically saying that he's surprised Duncan cares. Courtney would then run up with Duncan asking where the heck she was, with Courtney kicking him in the balls, revealing she knows everything about the cheating. This causes the two to get to an argument and eventually a fight, with Courtney beating Duncan's ass, as Chris announces in the background eventually that Team Fabulous won. After that, with a fight between the new exes, Courtney would get up and say that she can at least get her proper revenge by shoving Duncan off a plane. But in the end, at the vote, Chris would announce that this is a non-elimination round, with Courtney getting super pissed at Duncan because he gets to stay for another round and she has to see his face. After that, though, the episode ends. Episode 16, Our Picnic at Hanging Dork, opens up with Duncan and Courtney having a screaming match in economy class. Bridget would be trying to split the two up and make sure they don't kill each other, but at the same time, it makes her kind of think about how Jeff will react if she sort of cheated on him with everything that's going on with Alejandro. She probably shouldn't be thinking about that, but that's currently on her mind as Duncan and Courtney are trying to murder each other. Transitioning to first class, so Gwen is dealing with her black eye courtesy of Courtney as Leshawna helps her out, saying that Courtney's gone on her last nerve for far too long, and once merge hit, her and Gwen are going to vote her sorry ass out of this plane. Gwen would be surprised that Leshawna is still on her side and ask if that means Leshawna won't vote for Gwen if they lose the next challenge, which Leshawna would reassure Gwen, saying that she's not going to ditch her friend again. Gwen would smile, and Alejandro would be spying on the two and be pretty annoyed that Leshawna is still more loyal to Gwen, it seems, than him. But Alejandro's pretty confident he can use his charm to get Leshawna falling into line. He just needs a little bit more of a push. Heading to the challenge, Chris would explain the destination and task everyone to collect emails, with everyone beginning. Courtney would be trying to self sabotage like she did in the original, with Alejandro briefly helping her out and whispering to her the idea to flirt with Noah for the sake of revenge, like he did with Tyler in the original, but Tyler's no longer here. Courtney would find this idea great like she did in the original and plan to do just that. Outside of that, though, and Alejandro grabbing the rest of the emails, particularly for Leshawna, saying that he'll do anything for her as a lie, everyone just grabs their emus and sets off into the outback. On the ride to Hanging Rock, Courtney would try Alejandro's idea of flirting with Noah, with him responding rather sarcastically most of the time, asking what Courtney's doing. Courtney would say that she isn't doing anything, just wanting to be flirty, with Noah seeing that Courtney is trying to flirt with him for the sake of revenge, would just kind of not have it and blankly state that it isn't going to work. Gwen and Duncan are way too busy with each other, and it's just going to expedite her pain. Her best bet is just blanking the two and moving on with her life. She's only making herself look sad. Courtney would be a bit stunned by Noah saying that, as it's the first genuine piece of advice he's given. But look at Duncan and Gwen, who are not even looking at her at all, and would sigh. Maybe you're right. I was just going based off what Alejandro told me, but I can see it's not working. Thanks for the help, though. She then walks off with Noah being a bit confused on why Alejandro would want Courtney to flirt with Noah of all people, and take note of it. The teams arrive to the cliff, and Team Fabulous ends up getting first thanks to Corny's self sabotage, allowing them to get the electric shears. Though Corny ends up arriving pretty shortly after, allowing Team Mama to start pretty quickly, even if they have the garden shears as a disadvantage. This leads to the musical number playing out with all 8 players left in the game saying, "We are shearing sheep." Once the song ends, though, it'd be revealed that Duncan found the right sheep and ends up winning, like he did for Canon Team Chris. This allows Team Mama to win first class, much to Courtney's annoyance, and Team Fabulous to head to a vote. I know I kind of sort of skipped over the main part of the challenge, but that's because this is effectively RNG, and Duncan got the right sheep and can, so I have no reason to believe he wouldn't again. So, yeah, Team Fabulous loses. For the vote, although Alejandro tries to charm and convince Leshawna every single way he can with Gwen needing to go, Leshawna, being super headstrong when she wants something very particular, would rather vote for Lindsay as she is the weakest link. Alejandro would keep trying to convince Leshawna, but seeing that he could potentially lose her trust, would just agree to disagree with her and vote their separate ways. This leads to a tie between Gwen and Lindsay, as Gwen and Lindsay obviously vote for each other because Gwen's mad at Lindsay for exposing the cheating, and Lindsay just wants to defend herself from the cheater. Lucky for me, there was already a tiebreaker here in canon, so the koala tiebreaker remains the same. And Gwen was allergic to eucalyptus, so I don't really have to think about it, meaning that Lindsay is able to win this tiebreaker pretty easily, sending Gwen home in the process. Gwen takes the drop, puffy face and all, as Leshawna sadly waves Gwen off, with Alejandro smiling. "Thank God she's gone," he would say in confessional, as Gwen was getting far too suspicious of him for his liking, and it could easily secure Corny's loyalty and merge as just the extra cherry on top. Sure, Leshawna and Corny don't like each other, but he can make it work. Episode 17 of Sweet and Sour opens up with just after last episode's elimination, with Noah and Alejandro talking once more, with Noah asking why did Alejandro get Courtney to flirt with him. Alejandro would just say that he wanted Noah to make a safe ride to merge and was worried once Duncan went home that if their team lost again, Noah would be going home. So Alejandro wanted Courtney and Noah to get together so Noah would be safe. Alejandro would then promptly leave, saying that he's just looking out for him, with Noah having a confessional later saying that that was oddly nice of him, and he starts to consider if Alejandro's actually loyal to him, but would slap his face, saying that he's likely doing it just as Alejandro's playing everybody, including him. Moving to the actual day in first class, Courtney be enjoying having one of the cheaters off the plane. Now it's just time to take down the other one. She starts planning a confessional about how she's going to eliminate Duncan via self sabotage. Sure, last time it didn't work, but surely this time it will. Bridget would see the manic state Courtney is in planning a ton of random stuff on a list and ask Courtney if she's okay, with Courtney telling Bridget the plan about getting rid of Duncan via self sabotage. Although Bridget isn't the type to do this type of thing, she's willing to do it for the sake of her friend's mental state, as she can see Courtney's a bit off the rails right now. So Bridget agrees to help Courtney get rid of Duncan, which she would thank and plan with Bridget about how they need to get rid of Duncan via self sabotage around. Economy class wouldn't have much going on though, so we can head to the challenge because it would just be Alejandro flirting with Leshawna and Lindsay, and that's it. For the building section of the challenge, Noah would quickly realize it's a boat, with Duncan agreeing, and they start getting to work. Though Bridget and Courtney would stop everything they can to make sure that doesn't go well. Eventually, the guys notice and confront the girls about it, with Courtney deflecting, but Bridget eventually pulls Noah over to the side and explains how they plan to throw the today's challenge. Noah would be against it at first, but Bridget would point out it's likely the only way to quell Courtney's rage in any way they can, which Noah eventually agrees. After seeing Courtney chuck Duncan so far, he ends up crashing into the other team's stuff. Meanwhile, on Team Fabulous, Lindsay would end up making a comment to make Alejandro realize that the thing they're making is a boat. So they end up doing so, leading to them be able to finish the boat first, mainly thanks to almost everyone in Team Mama now sabotaging themselves. So this allows Team Fabulous to get the Flints used in the next challenge. Also, Courtney gets to sing a song called I'm Gonna Tear You Down, a rage-fueled musical attack on Duncan about how she's going to make him pay. Other people will be sprinkled into the song, but it's mainly Courtney focused and also Duncan a bit. The next part of the challenge would be extremely brief, as to put it bluntly, Team Mama's boat just straight up can't float thanks to the not so handy work of three people. Duncan would be trying to get it working, but it just leads to Team Fabulous being able to win without any problems, as they're so focused on their boat, they just don't focus on Team Fabulous being able to coast by. Luckily for Duncan, though, he's safe as this is another non elimination round. This makes Courtney even more pissed, as this is the second time he's been saved via complete bullshit. Also, note Lindsay would have been Admiral Lindsay or Hot in this episode because, you know, they're on the water. Why wouldn't the personality come back? Just a fun detail I wanted to add. Episode 18, or the Aftermath 3 After Mayhem, Jeff and Sierra are our hosts for the episode. If you're wondering where Blanley is, though, she's basically touring internationally. The thing that Bridget was supposed to be doing, as there's no way in hell I believe Blanley could kidnap Sierra because it's Sierra. Anyway, after the three most recent boosts are swiftly introduced, we get to see the first ever total drama comeback play out, with three open slots thanks to Leshawna, Noah, and Lindsay all being in the game still. For the three boosts that didn't happen in canon get to compete here. And thanks to Sierra being a host now, it's pretty clear that it ends up being the other three. So that makes our comeback players Beth, Tyler, Cody, Heather, and Owen. Also note, for players who are not in this challenge, I use a real dice to figure out how they rolled. So blame the dice for people who come back. Or don't. In the first round, Heather starts off by rolling a 2, landing on the Area 51 challenge, and although athletic at some points, I doubt she has the skills to last long enough on the dodging lasers, meaning that she eventually gets hit and is out. Next would be Tyler, who ends up rolling a 5 light cannon, landing on the trap space, eliminating him like in the original. Cody would go next and rolls a 6, landing on what was once a Heather tile but is now a Lindsay tile. The challenge would be to name one smart thing Lindsay did on purpose, which Cody would struggle to do, but Sierra, being a co host at this point, would give a small hint to him, trying to make him think of season 2, though Cody still ends up drawing a blank, leading to him being out. Sierra would sigh but move on to Owen, who rolls a 2. Thanks to his size, Owen ends up accidentally knocking over the laser pillars onto the aliens, leading to him winning by default. After that, Beth would roll her 6 like in the original, and even though it's a different challenge, Beth can easily think of many smart things Lindsay did on purpose, as they're besties. This ends round 1 with only Beth and Owen still in the game. Round 2 has Owen start by rolling, landing on a 4, meaning that he gets, for the third time, a Lindsay square. But Owen would just copy one of Beth's many answers she gave during her section. This gives him the pass, but Beth would call it unfair, though Owen says that he'll make it up to Beth next time by giving her the answer that she needs help on in the future. Beth would be fine with that idea and roll her 6 like she does in the original again, and is able to catch the intern like she did in the original. But once Beth gets the question, she would be similarly stumped to how she was in the original and ask Owen if he knows it, with Owen responding, "Of course I do! It's the schnitzel kickers! Schnitzel." But like Blanley in the original, since Owen was the one to answer the question, he ends up winning the comeback and gets put back in the game. Owen would celebrate as Beth calls it unfair, but Sierra and Jeff would sign off the show anyway. Episode 19, or Niagara Brawls, has everyone drop from the plane into a near-death experience with the water of Niagara Falls. Luckily for everyone, though, Alejandro is able to save them just in time thanks to charming some nearby animals to help all of them out. After that, the merge gets officially announced by Chris, who also announces Owen back into the game. Owen would sing a song called The Owen Song, which is so bad, but it turns into a so bad it's good type thing, like ironically. Courtney would heavily complain about Owen being back in the game, asking if he's a mole again like he was in season 2, which Chris would confirm he isn't, though Courtney's heavily suspicious of that statement. After the challenge is explained, duos are split by random chance, which means I'm just going to pick who I think makes the most sense for each. So pairs for this challenge will be Owen and Lindsay, Bridget and Noah, Leshawna and Alejandro, and Duncan and Courtney. Now that I've said the pairs, we can just head to the first part of the challenge. So for the first part of the challenge, each group has to communicate with the bride that causes an obstacle course and reach a dress first, versus do so gaining an advantage, and anyone who doesn't failing the challenge. Alejandro and Leshawna are able to cross super easily, like Alejandro and Heather did in Canon, but unlike Canon, once Duncan keeps messing with Courtney, getting her hit by every obstacle, Noah would eventually butt in, pointing out how she could just not move anymore and just make sure Duncan gets up for elimination like she wanted. Courtney would realize, oh yeah, he's right, and then stop moving. Duncan would change his tune and start arguing Courtney that they have to do the challenge, but Courtney would just say that's what he gets for messing with her. Lindsay and Owen would also fail thanks to their combined stupidity, and while Noah and Bridget would be able to pass because they've been working together for a while, this means we only have two duos into the bridge challenge. Once we're at the next part, Alejandro and Lashana get a head start as the two talk about who to eliminate. They end up agreeing on Duncan eventually, but during this, Alejandro fake trips and loses on purpose like Cannon to not be seen as a threat. This means that only Noah and Bridget are left, and the two are able to cross without much of a hassle as Bridget's pretty light for Noah to carry, so even with Noah being slightly below average in strength, he would be able to do it. They also are able to answer the questions without any issues, meaning that Bridget and Noah win immunity. For the vote, at first Alejandro gathers himself, Courtney, and Lashana and Noah to work together on the vote against Duncan, but Lashana being headstrong generally and Courtney saying some stuff would have led to Lashana not wanting to work with Courtney and just voting her instead with Duncan. Everyone's a little bit annoyed with Alejandro grumbling, but Noah would say it's fine that they can just grab Bridget for the vote, which he would do so. Alejandro would also grab Lindsay, so it makes enough votes to guarantee a majority, and Duncan is going home. Duncan and Lashana Del vote for Courtney, and Owen votes for Alejandro, considering all the stuff he saw at the aftermath. Duncan would sigh, seeing it coming, as Courtney taunts him before he leaves, making Duncan roll his eyes, grabbing the parachute, and making him mother about how he just wants to jump off the plane even faster now. After he does, Courtney would celebrate her personal win, and the episode would end. Episode 20, or Chinese Fake Out, we open to see Noah and Bridget invite Courtney up to first class as she's beaming with joy about Duncan being eliminated. Noah gets her to refocus though on the next thing, as they need to plan out their next game move. Right now, it's 3-on-3 with Owen being in the middle of the two sides. They need to pull Owen to their side before Alejandro pulls him to his, because they need to vote Alejandro out this round. The two girls would question why Alejandro's need to be voted out, but Noah would explain that it would break the alliance into two, as the main reason why Lindsay and Lashana are working together at all is because of Alejandro, so he's the biggest threat. Courtney would try to argue Lashana is because of comp strength, and Noah would agree that she's a threat too, but Al needs to be their number one priority. Courtney and Bridget would agree, but Bridget would be unsure in confessional, saying that she still likes Alejandro despite trying to avoid him most of the time desperately. Panning to economy class, Alejandro effectively has the same conversation Noah had with Bridget and Courtney, but Alejandro tells Lindsay and Lashana this. They would see his point and agree to this, with Lashana saying that they can finally get rid of Courtney if that happens, as Owen doesn't like Courtney and Courtney is a massive comp threat. Lindsay would agree, also not liking Courtney, and Alejandro would also agree because it could easily pull Bridget onto their side once Courtney's gone, as, again, Courtney's still blocking Bridget from, making sure Alejandro and her don't fucking kiss. So Alejandro would walk up to Owen trying to convince him to join their side because he's in economy class, but Owen wouldn't pay attention to Alejandro at all, asking him to repeat what he said. Alejandro walks away pretty annoyed, just not wanting to deal with Owen, trying to think of either a backup plan or recruit him during the challenge if needed. Also, no chef alliance happens here because no one has a reason to, work with him. Moving on to said challenge, Chris would try to explain it fully, but thanks to a call from the producers, everyone rushes to try to make it to the end, not allowing Chris to fully explain the rules. On the race to the vehicles, though, Alejandro's first, grabbing the bike and skateboard, offering Courtney, who's up next, to take her pick, as Alejandro wants to split the votes between Noah's side in, Bridget and Courtney vote one person, Noah and Owen vote the other, just in case if Owen sides with Noah in his group. Courtney be flattered taking the bike as Alejandro takes a skateboard, with Leshawna coming up shortly after asking why he's helping Courtney, as that's the person supposed to vote out. Alejandro would explain his thought process, which would get Leshawna a little bit annoyed, but agree, even if she doesn't like it. Leshawna then takes the tricycle, leading to afterwards Bridget taking the donkey thanks to her love for animals, Noah and Owen going together, with Owen carrying the trolley, and lastly, Lindsay being a bit of a dunce ends up taking the shoes that Heather did in Canon. On the ride to the finish, Alejandro would continue working on Courtney, which would be going pretty well, but Leshawna gets kind of annoyed, getting stuck in the crack like Courtney did in the original, with Alejandro going back to help her as Courtney laughs in her face. After that mishap, though, the three carry on pretty normally, with Leshawna eventually hitting the landmine Courtney did in the original, as Courtney, on her bike, is able to have a much easier time seeing and avoiding obstacles, while Leshawna, who's kind of a larger person, would be struggling on the bike and not be able to see properly because angles. Anyway, after that, we get to see Noah and Owen getting along as they travel together, chatting and cracking jokes. We also get to see Bridget and her donkey get along as well. In the end, Lashana is the only one not able to compete in the second part, meaning we can head to the buffet challenge. Okay, since this isn't just an eating challenge with Owen in it, I think it's safe to say he wins, so I'm just going to go over plot stuff. Bridget would meet the dog he meet as she bonded with the animal and run off like Cody did in the original. Alejandro gets Lashana to eat the food like he did Courtney in the original, as Lashana's pretty impressive with eating challenges. Noah ends up discovering this after he gets eliminated, which is right before the final round, leading to the girls getting into a massive fight, as Courtney calls the cheating really stupid. And Owen would win the final round, taking Noah the first class, which would make him smirk, knowing that he has Owen on his side. And Alejandro would see this and elect to pivot his strategy a tiny bit to make sure he stays alive this round. That's it. Anyway, Owen wins immunity. For the vote, Alejandro would get to work on charming Courtney and Bridget, talking about how their side should vote for Lashana, as she's totally the person who came up with the cheating. And thanks to Courtney already disliking Lashana a good bit, and Bridget being slightly charmed by Alejandro still, even if she doesn't want to admit it, would be convinced and try to talk to Noah about the change of vote. Noah would get annoyed and point out how Alejandro is an eel and a bigger threat, but Bridget points out how Lashana is a beast in challenges, and Courtney would state that the two aren't changing their minds. Noah would grumble, but neither numbers would agree and try to talk to Owen about the vote. But Owen, seeing all the stuff that Alejandro did, just can't vote for anyone else. This leads to a tie between Courtney and Lashana, leading to the double elimination. Also, if you're wondering why Alejandro works on Courtney the entire episode just to eliminate her here, the reason why is because Courtney's too big of a physical threat for Alejandro to keep around for much longer, especially with Lashana around. So, yeah, that's why he votes for Courtney. After the two receive their parachutes, Courtney would have a nice goodbye from Noah and Bridget, while Lashana tries to get a goodbye from Alejandro, though Alejandro just decides to ignore her, working on his next step of the plan, flirting with Lindsay and Bridget. Lashana would see this and get pretty pissed, leaving in a huff as Courtney jumps as well. Episode 21, our African Lion Safari, starts with Noah talking to Owen, asking why did Owen vote for Alejandro yesterday, despite explaining the vote changed to Lashana. Noah would explain that he just couldn't vote for anyone else, knowing all the manipulation Alejandro's done to all the girls. This makes Noah briefly pause. Wait, so you know Alejandro's been manipulating every single girl this game? Yep, saw in the aftermath. He was even manipulating Iz. And you didn't say anything because, well, you were already targeting Al already, so I assumed the problem would be naturally dealt with. After a brief pause and Noah facepalming himself, he would realize that he can just get Owen to expose Alejandro, so Noah would drag Owen to economy class to do so. Speaking of economy class, Alejandro is flirting with the two girls, trying to convince them to vote off Owen next, with both of the girls falling right into Alejandro's lap until Owen and Noah barge into economy class, with Noah getting Owen to expose Alejandro for all the manipulation he's done, adding his own evidence as well. Although Alejandro is normally good at talking his way out of this type of situation, with all the evidence, it's enough to make Bridget realize, yep, they're definitely telling the truth. And Lindsay, being on the bit of a more naive side, would take Alejandro's side, not seeing any of this as true. Alejandro would then decide in retaliation and hopefully to save himself to expose Noah about knowing the Gwunkin kiss before it happened and using it as leverage to save himself a few rounds. Noah would try to lie, saying it's not true, but Owen would also confirm that, pointing out how Al and Noah worked together on that plan. This makes Bridget feel really betrayed and upset on multiple accounts, leading to right before the challenge, as she leaves economy in rage. For the first part of the challenge, although gathering plums doesn't matter too much, I want to go over it. Lindsay and Noah both failed due to not being the best physically. Owen would be doing decently well thanks to his size and being able to bounce back the balls because fat jokes back at others. But Bridget would hit a really clean shot directly where Owen is holding the plums, causing him to drop them because it would kick them out of his hands. Bridget would be able to do this thanks to being generally athletic and also using her rage as fuel like Courtney does in canon. Well, not in canon, but just generally. After that, Bridget would celebrate feeling how satisfying it was, with Bridget continuing once Alejandro goes, and allowing her to dodge Alejandro's attacks of kicking the balls back, with Bridget finally being able to land a clean shot on Alejandro, getting him out just before the end. Lastly, though, Bridget would have a run where she's able to cleanly dodge everyone else's shots and is able to avoid Alejandro's mix up, being able to grab the plums and able to make it to the end successfully. After that great challenge performance, Bridget would have a confessional saying how great it felt, and she kind of gets why Courtney uses her rage as a weapon sometimes, chuckling a bit after saying that. Moving on to when they had to shoot the gourds, Bridget would use her anchor once again to allow her to hit the gourd pretty quickly, allowing her to gain the 6 trank ball advantage. Alejandro would hit his next, and Noah would get his eventually, meaning that they both get 3 trank balls. Owen would also be able to hit his, but actually does it by accident because he ends up chucking his bat, meaning that he only gets 2. Lastly, poor Lindsay would end up failing, meaning that she only gets a single trank ball and no slingshot. After that, though, Chris would reveal the partly feral Ezekiel and explain the goal of capturing him, releasing Ezekiel to give him a head start in the challenge before it begins. Also note, since it's half feral Ezekiel, it just means he's going to act like more like the Jack the Ripper instead of how he acted in this episode. It doesn't change the challenge, though, really. That's it. Once the challenge begins, Alejandro would be going off with Lindsay as Bridget tries to go off alone, but Noah and sequentially Owen would be following her. Noah tries to explain to Bridget his side of the story, and Alejandro is just making things look worse than it actually was, as he wasn't 100% sure about the cheating, but Bridget would not be having any of it and try to ignore him, running into the rhino as a result of this. This leads to Noah and Bridget and Owen running away from it as we turn to Alejandro and Lindsay, where Alejandro uses a hair tie and some sticks lying around to make a makeshift slingshot for Lindsay that she can use. She'd be thankful for this, and the duo end up walking around for a bit till they end up in quicksand like Alejandro and Duncan did in canon. They end up seeing the half feral Zeke, which gets the two out like in the original, and is able to easily dodge Lindsay's shot once she tries to get a chance at it and tries to hit him. She would be sad about being out of shots as Alejandro begrudgingly gives her another shot to continue his manipulation, which Lindsay would be thankful for, but Alejandro would grumble in confessional about how useless Lindsay is as a whole. Moving back to Noah, Bridget, and Owen, once they're free from the rhino, Noah would continue trying to talk to Bridget, trying to get her to vote Alejandro, but Bridget would be pretty annoyed, shouting at him that she'd rather be anywhere else than where she is right now. This leads to Bridget getting captured by baboons, like Cody did in the original, and make Owen and Noah chase after her. Thanks to that, we have the same moment where everyone sees each other and ends up knocking each other out. Well, minus Bridget, who's dealing with the baboons, like I said. After the half-hour nap, Chris would order them to sing Wake Up, which goes effectively the same just with the new players. After everyone's awake, though, Alejandro would try to talk to Noah and get them to agree on a deal where they vote for Bridget, as Bridget currently likes neither of them right now, and she has shown a ton of strength in today's challenge. But Noah would deny that deal, with Noah believing that he can not only save his friendship with Bridget, but also not wanting to work with Alejandro. So Noah would run off, getting Owen to follow on the side quest to save Bridget. Alejandro would roll his eyes, muttering, like that's ever going to happen, as he walks off, deciding to do his plan he had in canon with Heather, but by himself and using Lindsay as a bait this time. Noah and Owen arrive seeing Bridget dealing with the baboons who are not letting her leave, as Noah pulls Owen to the side, trying to come up with a plan of attack. But Owen decides to just rush in there and use his special ability to take down most of the baboons, with Noah picking off a few stragglers using his trank balls. After that, they're able to save Bridget pretty easily, with Noah taking the time to fully explain everything, apologizing to Bridget about not fully telling Courtney about the Duncan cheating sooner, and Bridget, not holding grudges, would be able to forgive him alongside of just being saved. Noah would say that he's pretty happy that Bridget forgave him as Owen calls at the cute moment, allowing the three to have a group hug as Owen would force it, with Noah saying that they need to focus on the challenge again and make sure Alejandro doesn't win. So they try to run back to find Zeke. After that nice moment, though, we have Alejandro and Lindsay continuing to travel together, with Alejandro eventually tripping Lindsay into a bloodberry bush like he does Duncan, allowing half feral Ezekiel to investigate, meaning that Alejandro can take a shot at Ezekiel, hitting him and winning the challenge and immunity. He would then have a confessional saying that he found the one use for Lindsay, that being bait. He would then snicker, and then we would head to the vote. For the vote, since Alejandro has immunity, it's pretty clear that the trio of Noah, Owen, and Bridget are all going to vote for Lindsay, as, Bridget literally just got saved by the other two. Owen and Noah are pretty close. It's pretty clear Lindsay's going to go home. Lindsay and Alejandro would end up voting for Bridget, though, but it's pretty clear Lindsay's gone. Lindsay gets confused on why she's going home, with Bridget saying that it's not Lindsay's fault, there were just no other options. Lindsay would just shrug at that statement, saying goodbye to everyone, saying she had a fun time, and then shortly after jump. Alejandro would then grumble about his plan falling apart slowly but surely, as Chris asks who does Alejandro want to bring first class. He thinks on it a bit, but lands on Bridget, as Alejandro believes that he can charm Bridget, at least try to, and might be able to sway her onto his side instead of Noah and Owens. Episode 22, Rapafui, opens up with Alejandro trying to flirt with Bridget, but knowing what he's like at this point now, would actively state that she's not going to fall for him again. Alejandro would question again, which makes Bridget fluster a bit before she corrects herself and leaves, not wanting to deal with him anymore. Alejandro would smile, though, knowing that Bridget can break with just some time. That's the only important scene for the challenge, though, as Owen and Noah are just chatting in a comedy class. Just a comedic moment, and that's really it. So we can move on to the actual challenge. Once they land on Easter Island, Chris would explain the challenge and the advantage Alejandro has with the basket he won last episode. Noah would groan about Alejandro having an advantage, as Chris would give each of the Final Four a headdress. Bridget green, Noah pink, Owen purple, and Alejandro blue like the original. The Final Four start looking for eggs as Alejandro continues his work on Bridget, giving her the basket to carry all the stuff, as he can just juggle the eggs like he does in canon. Bridget would be flattered as Noah butts in, telling Bridget not to fall for Alejandro and focus on the challenge. Bridget would try to repeat that she is not falling for him, though the blush on her cheek says otherwise, so she would try to distract herself, thinking of Jeff instead to keep her mind occupied. Everyone continues to grab their eggs as Noah and Owen struggle thanks to not having anything to carry their stuff with, and neither can juggle like Alejandro can. Eventually, though, Owen would realize that he can just use his shirt, allowing Noah to carry his eggs in the shirt as well, making them able to head up the mountain together. After that, Bridget and Alejandro would be moving along, separately though, as Alejandro is focused on juggling and Bridget is naturally clumsy. Once the boulders come, both of them get hit and lose a few eggs because of it. Because of this, you lose a lot more time when breaking eggs and having to go back, versus having to struggle to carry the eggs at the start but not breaking your eggs at all. Noah and Owen end up making it to the top first, with Owen receiving the advantage. The order for the challenge ends up being Noah, Owen, Alejandro, and Bridget. During the Condor song, thanks to Bridget having the green headdress, i.e., Sierra's old headdress, it means that she has the bird that hatches, and because Bridget would have been traveling solo, trying to ignore Alejandro, the bird would have no choice but to imprint on her, allowing Bridget to win the challenge. She would celebrate, and at the elimination, the votes come up to be a 3-1 with Alejandro going home, though Chris announces a non elimination round. The other three groan as Chris asks Bridget who she wants to take the first class, which she ends up picking Noah, ending the episode there. Episode 23, or Drumheller, opens up with Alejandro messing with Chris's laptop, trying to figure out some way to get Bridget to flip to his side. He decides to try to convince Bridget that Owen is a mole again by making several fake photos of Owen and Chris talking together and giving Owen advantages, but this wouldn't work at all, as Bridget doubts that Owen would do that, considering how much guilt he felt last season when he did it, and Owen has not felt a single ounce of guilt this time. Bridget would walk away as Alejandro gets annoyed about another one of his plans failing, making him give up on trying to separate the three and instead focus on gaining immunity this episode. For the Dinosaurs challenge, not much important happens while they're building the dinosaurs, so we can skip to what exactly they did build. Bridget would have made a tribute to Jeff being called the Jeffadon. Noah would have made the Chrysosaurus, which Heather did in canon, but it just makes sense for Noah trying to suck up the Chris because he would do that type of stuff. Owen would have made the Chompasops, which is a dinosaur head but with a chonky body, and it looks rather messy to say the least, as it's kind of half finished. Lastly, Alejandro makes the Allosaurus like he does in canon. With each of the dinosaurs made, we can move on to the judging, where everyone votes for their favorites with the lie detector. For the vote, begrudgingly, Owen, Noah, and Bridget all end up voting for Alejandro, as each of them find it pretty impressive that he could make a dinosaur from memory. On the other hand, Alejandro ends up voting for Bridget, as her display of affection is something he likes, as he did with Sierra's. This ends up meaning that Alejandro gets the drill, while Bridget gets the pickaxe. Noah gets the pail and shell because Chris likes himself and wants Noah to get third place, and Owen gets nothing. Alejandro would smile, confident that he can win the drill, and victory is assured for him. Once the challenge is revealed to find fuel, it would begin with Noah trying to pull Owen and Bridget over to the side in order to come up with some plan to defeat Alejandro. Noah would see Bridget being the only person who could reasonably win the challenge with her pickaxe, so would order Owen to distract Alejandro while Noah helps Bridget find a barrel. They agree to the plan and everyone splits off into Drumheller, Owen after Alejandro, and Noah and Bridget together. Alejandro would be digging pretty calm and confident that he can win until Owen shows up, who would be trying to stop Alejandro in any way he can think of. This leads to a lot of slapstick and gross out humor as Owen tries to distract Alejandro, with Alejandro getting progressively more and more pissed at Owen. Eventually, though, Alejandro ends up threatening Owen that he'll pierce him with the drill if Owen doesn't stop, which gets Owen to back off a bit as he did waste a lot of Alejandro's time and it should be enough for his allies to find a barrel. Hopefully. Alejandro then smirks as he gets back to work, hopefully finding a barrel soon. Panning to Bridget and Noah, they're looking for a barrel together as a boulder ends up getting chucked, landing on Bridget, causing her to get wedged in the hole like Heather did in canon, but at the same time also revealing that the oil barrel that the pickaxe landed on is right next to them. That could allow Noah to win if he digs it up and immediately takes it to Chris. This leads Noah to being forced to pick to either save Bridget or win the challenge first. This would lead to a song called Make Up Your Mind, a Noah centric song about Bridget trying to sing and convince Noah to save her, as she feels like she's going to get crushed under the rock if Bridget's not freed soon. But Noah would be worried about Alejandro winning the challenge if he doesn't take the chance and run the barrel to the end. The song ends though with Bridget being saved by Noah as he states he's made up his mind. The two would try to travel the barrel back to Chris, but it would be revealed that Alejandro already won the challenge. They would sigh, knowing the next elimination is going to be pretty tough. For the vote, Alejandro would vote for Noah for pissing him off today with the sabotage, as Owen and Bridget end up voting for each other, as both are closer to Noah generally, leading to Noah being the swing vote. Personally, I think he votes for Owen, as in this timeline, they've only been friends for about 3 to 4 episodes, and Bridget and Noah have been effectively working together the entire season. Also, it's stated in the wiki that he has a crush on Bridget for about this season's time, so yeah, I think that definitely plays an influence to why he did half the stuff he did, and why he saves Bridget here. Owen sighs about being eliminated, but says he had a fun time and he got to meet two really cool people. Bridget and Noah would give him a farewell as Alejandro shoves Owen off the plane once again, laughing about how it's even more satisfying a second time, with Bridget and Noah glaring at him. Episode 24, or the Aftermath for Hawaiian Style, opens up with Jeff, Blamey, and Sierra all hosting, with each of them swiftly introducing the 5 boots that have happened since the last show. Owen's here thanks to the non exploded plane, meaning that he isn't stuck in Drumheller. Same thing with the final 3, by the way. We then get the song for Who You Gonna Root For, which is now sung by Jeff, Sierra, and Blanley as Bridget is in the final three. After that, we get an analysis of that final three with each of the three hosts looking at one person. Jeff looking at Bridget, Sierra looking at Alejandro, and Blanley looking at Noah. Once we're done, we're getting to get to see who everyone is rooting for. Reminder, because Sierra, Jeff, and Blanley are all hosts, they are unable to vote. Alongside the fact that Ezekiel's on the plane, so the same goes for him. I won't go over who everyone votes and why, but just go over votes I see as notable. Justin would now root for Alejandro, as I feel like the only reason why he rooted for Cody and Cannon was because of their Total Drama Brothers connection, and because Justin sees a lot of himself in Alejandro, he would want Alejandro to succeed because of that. Eva and Izzy would vote for Noah because of their Team East Coast connection in the Island Special, and everyone else is pretty self explanatory, so I'm going to go over the volunteer for the contest and picking the animals. For the volunteers, Courtney goes for Bridget, Heather goes for Alejandro, and Owen would go for Noah. As for what animals they pick, Courtney would go with the dolphin for Bridget, thinking of her love for the water and kindness. Heather would go for the jaguar for Alejandro, same reason why Courtney did. And Owen would go for the raccoon for Noah in order to represent Noah's intelligence. With that, we can actually head to the contest alongside the musical number of the episode, where Heather effectively takes Harold's place. On the way down, Courtney and Heather would feud pretty bitterly as they compete the race down the waterfall, with Owen being very far behind as they sing. In the end, though, Courtney would be able to get her lay on the dolphin before Heather gets hers on the Doberman, while Owen, meanwhile, just completely flies off, missing entirely like Cannon. This leads to Bridget getting the wheelbarrow, Alejandro getting the baby stroller, and Noah nothing. After that, the trio hosts would close out the show pretty normally. Episode 25, our planes, trains, and hot aeromobiles, opens up with the final three on the plane thanks to it not being destroyed by Sierra. Alejandro will be relaxing in first class, going on a monologue about how this will be his life once he wins $1 million. Meanwhile, in economy class, though, Bridget and Noah are talking about plans to split the cash if either of them win. The winner would get 90% and the other person gets 10%. This was mainly Bridget's idea, but with Noah willing to accept it, he would be more talking about how he's not confident about his chances to win against either opponent in the finale, so getting some cash at the bare minimum would be nice. After that, Chris would kick the final three off the plane one last time back in the Drumheller as he explains the final challenge of reaching Tijuana Beach, where they will take boats to their final destination, Hawaii. All they have to do is use their wits and whatever junk is in the cargo hold to make it there. He would then set off on the jumbo jet with Chef, with both of them laughing, leaving the final three alone. Alejandro would then start taking the production truck like he does in Canon, as Noah ends up looking through garbage that's left in the cargo hold for something of use, with Bridget looking with him, eventually finding a bike and quickly setting off, with Noah looking for more stuff, eventually making the hot air balloon shortly after, setting off as well. As Bridget's dashing off into Drumheller on her bike, she would end up running over the train tracks like Heather walked over in the original, leading to her to go on the train instead of her bike because it's much faster. Alejandro would then go on the walkie talkie, cockily talking about how he's on the truck, but end up in the box thanks to kissing a Sasquatch like he does in the original. So, for current locations, Noah's currently working on his hot air balloon, which will be finished pretty soon. Bridget's on the train, and Alejandro's still on the moving truck. Everyone would continue traveling as Alejandro eventually lands on the same train Bridget does, where the two end up confronting each other as the storm sets in, leading to the musical number I'm Gonna Make It, playing out pretty close to canon with Bridget taking Heather's role and Noah sort of taking Cody's. The song would end differently though, as Alejandro is more likely to leave Bridget behind now, leading to her to take the horses like Alejandro did in the original, and Noah ends up not crashing as he's focused on trying not to die more than anything. This allows for all three players to reach Tijuana Beach around the same time, as even though Noah doesn't crash, a hot air balloon is a lot slower than being blasted by fireworks, so it ends up bouncing out. The final race on the water begins with Alejandro having a small lead over the other two, with him cackling about his soon to be victory, but Noah has other plans. He would tell Bridget to go up ahead while he distracts, but Bridget would interject and say that she can do it instead. Noah saved her multiple times at this point, and she would want to repay the favor. Noah would be a bit surprised by this, but go with it as he drives on, and Bridget would be getting Alejandro into a swordfish fight like Cody did in the original. She would distract Alejandro for long enough where Alejandro gets blown up by the sea mine as a result, with Bridget celebrating, saying that's what he gets for manipulating every single girl in the game. Noah's then able to get his spot in the finale shortly after, with Bridget about to gain her spot as well, but Alejandro's boat crashes into her, causing the two to tie, and Chris elect to do a tiebreaker next episode. Episode 26 for Hawaiian Punch as the final three get some opening confessional talking about how they feel before the finale begins. Noah would talk about how he's happy to make it to the finals, especially considering his poor performance in season 1, but feels like no matter who he's up against, he's going to be the underdog in that situation. Bridget's confessional would talk about how she's surprised she made it far without Jeff and would want to win for him, maybe even go on a nice vacation after the show in Hawaii if she wins. Lastly, Alejandro would talk about how he feels like the final two is actually between him and Bridget, as either of them could easily beat Noah in a finale because of how weak he is. Nonetheless, he'll win anyway. Noah would roll his eyes at Alejandro's comment, and the tiebreaker would begin between Alejandro and Bridget, which will be the same as canon for the sake of simplicity. The two would begin by taking swings at each other, and it's surprisingly even thanks to Bridget fully using her rage, as Courtney would be shouting her to do so from the stands. In fact, it looks like Bridget might just end up winning until Alejandro distracts her by pretending Jeff is in danger somehow. Bridget gets super distracted and results in Alejandro smacking Bridget into shark infested water, which Jeff would have to save her from. After that, though, Alejandro would save Noah, and Alejandro officially wins the tiebreaker, meaning Bridget takes third place. She would sigh before heading to the stands, cheering for Noah along the way. After Noah sarcastically remarks on how blasting Miss Popular into the water was a very smart move from Al right before a jury, Chris would correct Noah, saying it's not a jury vote, and instead each of the finalists get two helpers to help them in the finale. Alejandro would pick Heather, obviously, and Sadie, who he would charm into helping him, as he doesn't really have any other options otherwise, as Justin is not doing a life threatening challenge for Alejandro. Sure, he wants him to win, but he doesn't care that much. Noah, on the other hand, would pick Bridget, which she would immediately volunteer to do so anyway, and Noah would then ask Courtney afterwards to help him, but she would give Noah the cold shoulder at first because of the whole Glunkin incident. Though, after Noah apologizes and promises some of the cash, Courtney would immediately accept, perking her ears up the second she hears anything related to money. With the helpers decided, though, we can head to the first part of the final challenge. When it comes to making pineapple sacrifices of each other, Noah would have the upper hand, mainly thanks to having two strong allies who naturally have a lot more synergy than Heather and Sadie ever could, alongside Sadie just not being good at challenges. You could argue that Alejandro has to make a smaller sacrifice, but Sadie's too much of a deficit in my eyes for it to be worth anything. Anyway, the song verses would play out pretty close to canon, just Noah taking Heather's original role and Courtney having the solo that Harold had. Anyway, the song would end with Noah having the sacrifice made first, meaning he gets a 20-second head start in the next part. Each of the finalists get their respective awards, with Alejandro getting his baby stroller and Noah his nothing. Noah would sarcastically thank Owen for the help, with Owen saying you're welcome, thinking he was being genuine. Anyway, Noah would get his head start, and Noah would argue to Chris that since Bridget is Noah's helper right now, he should get the wheelbarrow. Chris would allow it, and Noah would smile as he raised his head, with Alejandro groaning and then starting shortly afterwards. But since Noah was light enough to be carried by a baby stroller, I think his sacrifice would also be light enough to be carried by a baby stroller too. So Alejandro was able to travel pretty normally. Both finalists arrive at the lava lake and teams start cutting ropes, with Alejandro and Noah having to repeatedly dodge falling objects. Noah is able to do this thanks to his shown reflexes during the Area 51 mini challenge, and Alejandro is able to do it because he's naturally athletic. Bridget, though, is eventually able to get a lucky break and able to land a grand piano right on Alejandro as Noah taunts Al as he crosses, running away with his sacrifice. Heather would notice how annoyed Alejandro gets when being called Aldo and start repeatedly calling him that until Alejandro's eventually able to lift the piano out of sheer frustration to run over to Heather and yell at her to stop calling him that, going on his crash out about Jose. Heather would just say that she was just trying to do it to make sure that Alejandro could win, with Alejandro seeing her point and thanking her before he runs off. This would decide the alternate winners, with seeing that Alejandro can beat Noah in a volcano race is unlikely. Noah's likely the canon winner here, and Alejandro's the alternate. In Noah's ending, he would be able to throw his sacrifice just as Alejandro comes up, with Noah celebrating his win, with most of the cast celebrating as he grabs the million, proud to have won. He taunts Alejandro one last time as Al grumbles. Meanwhile, in Alejandro's ending, he's able to beat Noah in the race, pushing Noah down at the last second, throwing his pineapple sacrifice in and cheering for himself, alongside of his helpers cheering as well. He would taunt Noah just as he's done celebrating, with Noah rolling his eyes. Either way, both players would lose the money thanks to Ezekiel, who throws himself into the volcano like he does in the original. And that's a what if. This was pretty fun to do as I liked getting to explore some dynamics that were either underutilized or abandoned in canon. But at the same time, I feel like it's a bit close to my last War Tour what if because I mean I did them back to back, so they're going to have some similarities. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the stuff that YouTubers make you do, and I'll see you on the summer side.